past few weeks, and you have to put a request in now. Do you actually want your bed turned down, or your room made, your towels picked up the bathroom floor? Nah, I thought I'd just let it all lie there like a complete dump, really, and come on holiday for that. You know, it's but you can't. You have to make a special request. They haven't got the staff to do it. I'm telling you, have you no experience?
I think we need something a bit cheery for Monday morning.
You like to travel a lot, don't you?
I do, but I often go and stay with friends, and then you don't have to deal with the sort of hotel.
You're not dealing with all of that. No, I think, Steve, you also make a very good point. Alternative departure points. Now, what I haven't heard any chaos about is cruise ships. You don't hear anybody saying there's a problem with the cruise ships.
Well, cruise ships have had a very bad kind of couple of years for PR because, of course, at the beginning of the pandemic, do you remember that the cruise ships were often their own sort of hotspots of COVID outbreaks? And one of our producers just reminded us, cruise ships obviously had the chaos with P&O and them trying to pay staff sort of less than minimum wage, and that caused absolute uproar.
Were they ferries? Well, they're not a lot of...
Well, that's more about how to get across, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. But I do think that, by and large, cruising is an ideal way of getting around at the moment. You board at somewhere like Southampton, and then you wake up somewhere like France or Italy or Spain or Portugal.
Yes, as long as no one has norovirus on board.
Yeah, OK. Well, I'd opt for cruises. You have to be persuaded on that one. Ben in London, there is no doubt in my mind that France's Isabel likes to say, Macron. Macron. She was here this morning, she'd be doing that. Macron, right? Emmanuel Macron will be with the blessing of the EU, are punishing Britain for leaving the European Union by causing mayhem at every corner. Is it not time for Britain to take back control on our side of the Channel? Well, it's just going to be, there's going to be a lot of tit for tat on this. There will, particularly with France. I think one of the problems was that some of the French border officials didn't turn up over the weekend, which caused a bad situation to be even worse. Well, good morning to Eddie in Worthing, who says, we've been trying for 3 years and paying France for it. It doesn't work. The EU borders are way too open. As long as they are, this problem will never go away. We voted to take back control twice, once in a referendum, once in a general election. 6 years on, what is the suggestion? Work with the EU on this. Well, you've got to ask yourself, is this a consequence of Brexit? Is this the reality of what it involves, that your passport has to be looked at and it has to be stamped? We're going to be talking about this just after 6:45 with Simon Calder. But right now we'll take a break, and then we're going through the papers in the company of Mr. Christopher Biggins and Emily Carver right after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
With the time just after 6:30, we'll bring you up to date news-wise. Here's how it's looking.
So the last two Conservative leadership candidates have been trading blows over immigration, China and tax cuts ahead of a TV debate later tonight. It's Liz Truss, of course, and Rishi Sunak. They're going to face off for the first time, just the pair of them, after a weekend that saw both camps trade rather personal attacks.
Holidaymakers are paying more than they could face ongoing travel delays at Dover and Folkestone. The AA says the weekends will probably be the busiest times, with possible repeats of gridlocked roads.
A new report suggests people's mental health in the north was more badly affected by the COVID pandemic than the rest of England. The Northern Health Science Alliance says under 35s were 2.5% more likely to have developed a psychiatric disorder, whilst prescriptions for antidepressants rose by 12%.
We'll shed some light on those stories and what's in the papers now with Christopher Biggins and Emily Carver. Very nice to see you both. Thank you very much. And Biggins, start with you. Biggins, you and I were speaking on the phone during the week about travel. You were worried about train travel. I was worried about air travel. Road travel now joins the list. Every sort of travel. Goodness me. So, this is in the Times, front page of the Times.
I know, it's a terrible story. I mean, first of all, let's go to the people who live near Dover. How are they getting around? Must be a nightmare.
Very slowly, I expect.
Very slowly, you're right. Must be a nightmare for them. Anyway, what they're saying is senior Conservatives, including the leadership contenders, are saying they accuse France of instigating the chaos of failing to send enough border staff to the busiest weekend of travel since the pandemic. But it looks as though this could go on all summer.
Yeah.
I mean, the chaos.
It also looks, Emily, and I'd like your view, it almost looks deliberate.
Deliberate from the French?
Yeah.
Well, I think perhaps that's what the government is saying, at least. That's what Sunak and Truss are saying. They're saying, you need to get your act together. The French authorities get more staff working. Passport control and also other checks and so on have been slowed down, perhaps because of that. But I also think, I've travelled a little bit this summer. I went on one trip to Italy. I think across Europe there are staff shortages. And I think that's because due to the pandemic and then everything getting back up and running, and now we've got a huge summer where people are going abroad. It's the first week of the school holidays for many families. So I think they haven't got the staff in place. And I think it's affecting many European countries.
Well, we're going to Tuscany in August, and we're going on a train.
Yes. Interesting.
I think it will be interesting. I mean, we are actually going from the St Pancras, and then we go through the tunnel, obviously, which I think we'll have then pass all the passport things, though, by then. So I think we will get through. And then we're going on trains to Italy, going to Paris first, then through to Italy, and then through to our destination.
How long does that take?
It'll take about, because we're staying 2 nights in Italy.
Breaking it up.
Yeah, breaking it up. But I think it's going to be quite fun.
Do you know, if that all goes to plan, it will be glorious.
Yeah.
But are you feeling a bit nervous that there may be 1 or 2 hiccups en route?
Well, there could be, you're right. But I mean, there could be hiccups in any travel nowadays.
Christopher, my parents did exactly the same thing the other week. They drove all the way down to Italy, to Chianti. And they stopped on the way, I think, in Avignon, somewhere like that. Maybe a place called Beaune in France, and then had a nice drive. And it all went to plan. The roads were fine. There wasn't too many hold-ups at the channel. But then, of course, that was before the school holidays.
Yeah.
So perhaps it was a bit tricky at the time.
I was just saying to Rosie before you came in, you're talking about trains and how that may work for you through Europe. And I was saying cruise ships. I mean, I think they're a very good option for getting around this hill. I mean, you can forget airports.
Oh, yeah, I know. I mean, all that thing about luggage, too, which is disgusting.
Yeah.
You look at those pictures and you see thousands of pieces of luggage just sitting there. I don't understand it. No. Yeah, cruises, I think cruises are lovely. I love a cruise, if you pardon the expression.
I do wonder if there's a bit of punishment about Brexit.
Yeah.
That's what some commentators have been saying.
I think
that
you're
the
right.
French authorities are like, we're just going to take a little bit more time just to show you what you're missing.
Yeah.
It's not just about that, though. Do you think there's an easy answer for us to say, we're going to blame the French rather than think we could have done a little bit more to prevent some of this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the reasons for these delays is because a 24-mile stretch of the M20 was closed. So that's going to be a nightmare. And that's why it's turned into a parking area for lorries.
Yes, and we can't blame the French president for that.
No.
We've got to understand that gone are the days when you just showed your passport and you were waved through.
Yes.
Right? They now have to look at your passport and stamp your passport, every individual one of them. So that's
terrible.
Well, they think it takes three times as long, so you think you either need 3 times as many staff or 3 times as much patience.
I tell you what a good idea is. I just had a new knee put in last year, as most people know, and you get help at airports and train stations, and you go to the head of queues, which actually is a very nice thing to do. So if you do have any ailments, mention them and then get help.
So get a replacement knee or hip, maybe.
Absolutely.
Just in advance of your holiday.
Before you're travelling.
Perfect, good solution.
Well, it goes back to my point about airports far too big, absolutely huge to deal with. And I flew out of Southampton Airport last week. Bliss.
Yeah.
Absolute bliss.
Yeah.
The train brings you to the front door, you get off, and it's just quiet and manageable and really, really nice. But these mega hubs, I don't know, but I just can't see the benefit.
Private jets are the answer, Eamonn.
Well, so Meghan and Harry say. Emily, now here, this is an awful, awful, awful situation, and we are sleepwalking into this terrible crisis. And this is lack of staffing, and it's been going on for years within the NHS. We've turned the NHS into an area where people simply do not want to work because they're under so much pressure. And maybe it's a pay issue as well, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, this should be front and centre of the leadership contest, and it should certainly be something that's discussed tonight in the leadership debate. Another leadership debate. Yes, apparently thousands and thousands of shortages among key frontline workers, so doctors, nurses, midwives and so on. We simply don't have enough, and they're projecting that because of our ageing population we're going to need about 500,000 new workers in the NHS over the next few years. So that's something the government needs to work on. And as you say, I think there are many, many factors that come into play. Yes, pay is one issue. The fact that many people in our NHS are going part-time.
Yeah.
77% of staff in the NHS are women, which is fantastic, but a lot of them do go part-time. I know from personal experience, friends of mine, once they've had children, go part-time, which is good for them, but not good for the service. Yesterday, also in the news was that, most GPs are working far fewer hours than they used to in the past, which, of course, is contributing to the backlog. But I think the pay issue is there. There doesn't seem to be a way of differentiating between people in terms of their individual merit. So you're sort of stuck in these what do you call them?
Tiers.
Yeah, in tiers of pay, and you can't really, unless you're promoted, you can't really get more pay if you're working harder than your colleagues. So I think that needs to be amended. But what do they do to attract more people in? Yes, they've been overworked over COVID, and a lot of them are considering leaving the NHS altogether, which is sad. So we've got two options. Either you recruit from abroad, or you have some kind of huge campaign to try and get people in this country to go into medicine and the like.
What would that campaign say to try and get people to join a workforce that we know are exhausted, overworked, and they say underpaid?
I know it's a great. I became involved with an NHS through what I was having done last year. I had the best time ever. I mean, they are wonderful. If you get it right, I think somehow the administration is one of the problems. I think there are too many people there pushing papers around in an office, and I
think we also expect too much from the NHS. We expect them to fix absolutely everything.
You're right.
And there's little personal responsibility.
Yeah, and it is a brilliant service if it works.
Biggins, I was like you. I had a week in hospital 6 weeks ago because of my back, and NHS, And in answer to your question as to where the staff come from, I'll tell you where they come from. They come from India, they come from Pakistan, they come from the Philippines, massive amount of people from the Philippines. I don't know if you find that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody, whether they were from here, whether they were from there, I asked them, because being the journalist I am, I sat there and just sort of interviewed people as they came in and out of me. But none of them were doing it for the money or the lack of money. It was a vocation for them. And it was an ambition for so many of them. People who were orderlies, people who were domestic staff, whatever, their ambition was to get into the clinical staff point of view. And that's
I think that's true, but I don't think it's necessarily the truth for absolutely everyone who goes into medicine. I know people, because it's, you know, it's one of those, to become a doctor, it's one of those jobs that you might just consider to be something that's high status rather than simply a vocation. And then you might be disappointed when you're not earning as much as your friends in the city.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on the person.
I think it's a very good point, a very good point.
So why isn't this story, it's front page of The Guardian, front page of The Mirror, and we all care about the NHS, why isn't that front and centre when it comes to the race to be the next Prime Minister?
Well, because they're not interested, because they're just interested in themselves. The egos of these two people is frightening. And also, I'm not interested. I won't be watching this thing tonight because, you know what's going to happen.
What more is there to say?
Exactly.
I mean, that's a very good point. 5 more weeks of this.
Oh,
and many more debates to come.
Dear, oh dear,
Why
it's
can't it just
commit
be decided?
suicide time, isn't it? Sorry?
I just say, why does it have to be drawn out for such a long time? Only 80,000 odd people get to decide anyway. They already know the candidates because they're members of the party.
And they know who's going to win, I'm sure.
It must be just so frustrating for the general public.
But so much can change in such a short amount of time. Just look at how much the political landscape's changed in the last month. We've inherited a very different situation from a few weeks ago.
Absolutely. I mean, there's even calls in some of the papers today to bring Boris back, because I think people are fed up with these two candidates fighting.
Well, what do you make of that?
Well, I think it's quite interesting. I mean, Boris was, towards, like all politicians, towards the end of his career, lost it. But, he did some good things. But, I mean, I think people are fed up. Absolutely fed up with politics at the moment.
So let's talk about saucy affairs then instead. Front page of the Daily Telegraph, there it is. That man there with that very superior looking look, because he's the richest man in the world, is Elon Musk. And so he's doing this one, Christopher. So what is the story? What is the story? It's on the.
Well, he's gone off, and I found this interesting. He's father of 9 children. Is that what happens when you're a billionaire and the richest man in the world? You can have children ad lib. You can have them all over the place. Anyway, I don't know what Sergey Brin's wife, Nicole. I wonder what she sees in him, apart from the money. He's quite. Oh, yes, he's quite... Sorry, I could see something in the distance going on. No, I think he's... it proves the point. If you've got money, you can go for anybody and you can have as many children as you like. And that's what Elon Musk is doing.
Why are we interested in this? It's on the front page of many of the papers.
Well, the papers today are so boring. Emily and I were just talking about that before coming on, and there's nothing in it at all.
Well, I'm pleased we've got you two to liven it up. Very quickly, Emily, I was a little bit dismayed about this. Front page of the Times, half of British women do no regular exercise. Half of us.
I know, do you?
Yes, I often run in and out of the office. I love it.
Okay, so I don't do that. So I can empathise with this because towards the end of the lockdown and for a long time afterwards, I was certainly not doing much exercise at all. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was out there, going for long walks, going for jogs, doing whatever. And then the motivation just went.
Yeah.
It just went. And now I'm starting to pick it back up. But I think for a lot of women, they have so much going on in their lives. They have children, they're probably working as well. They have their husbands as well. It's all, we've got a lot on your plate as a woman. And I think fitting in the exercise, there's no excuse though. Anyone can go for a walk.
What I would say is genuinely the one thing that would make me feel better is if I do a tiny bit of exercise, genuinely.
Nothing can't be improved through exercise.
Well, do you know what I've just started doing as well, which I'm really enjoying? I've joined a tag rugby team, and I really enjoy it because I've got 3 younger sisters, and I've spent many a time on a football pitch or whatever with boys who are reluctantly playing with girls. Now, if you play tag rugby, there are 5 boys in your team and 3 girls, and if the girls score a try, you get 2 points, and if the boys score a try, you get 1. So it's the first time I've ever played a game with both genders where the men are motivated to let the women play well. And it's been brilliant.
Wonderful. Is that why you're wearing your trainers now? Are you going to dash out any minute? Because you look absolutely gorgeous in blue, and then suddenly I noticed these trainers. But you're obviously going to go out and exercise.
I can't believe I've been outed. Look, I'm normally running in and out of this studio, and I find a high heel completely impractical. So
we have to dash out of this this section of the programme. We're going to talk about the channel, tourism, what's going on, the queues at the channel very, very shortly. For the moment, Christopher and Emily, thank you very much indeed. With that and the time
thanks
at
for
13
me right
minutes now before 7 o'clock, let's bring you up to date news-wise.
As we've been talking about, MPs are warning the greatest staffing crisis in the NHS's history is creating a serious risk to patient safety. The Health and Social Care Committee says research shows the health service is short of 12,000 doctors and 50,000 nurses and midwives.
More than 2 in 5 airport workers are considering leaving the industry. This is new research by the job site CV Library. A survey of 1,700 workers found they wanted better pay, less stress. 2 in 3 saying they haven't had a pay rise in a year.
A new study shows that the number of restaurants closing down has increased sharply in the past year. Accountancy firm UHY Hacker says the total jumped from over 850 to over 1,400 amid staff shortages and rising inflation.
Just want to get up to date now on the travel situation around the country, and particularly what you saw at Dover over the weekend. Travel expert Simon Calder joins us in the studio now. Simon, first of all, how are things running this morning, do we know?
They're getting a lot smoother, as you would expect. Of course, this was the biggest surge in tourists going from the 2 main gateways in Kent, that's Dover and Folkestone, across to continental Europe since 2019, and therefore since the Brexit changes took effect. And therefore, we didn't see it last year, actually, because if you might remember, just 3 days before the big getaway, we brought in something called Amber Plus, saying if you're thinking of going to France, you're going to have to quarantine for 10 days when you come back. So we didn't see it last year. This was first contact, and as you can see, it didn't go very well. Families have now got away. The backlog was cleared through the night. And now today, actually, the problem is getting rid of the many, many hundreds of trucks which are stacked up on the A20.
Awful. I mean, as you say, we didn't see it last year, but surely we did see it coming. Who wasn't prepared? The finger of blame goes where?
Oh, the finger of blame, Eamonn, all over the place. And as with so many issues like this, there's various different problems. So certainly Friday morning, the Port of Dover issued an unprecedented statement saying that the French had let them down. They had inadequately resourced the border. Of course, they need to check everybody's passport before you board a ferry at Dover. They simply hasn't shown up in the numbers that they needed. That caused a queue to build up. We then had many other traffic problems throughout that part of Kent. And people were spending 6, 7, 8 hours queuing. But there is also the Brexit dimension, which simply cannot be dismissed, even though the prime ministerial contenders basically just said, we blame the French. No, I stood there looking at the passport check. Now, anybody who's been across to France before Brexit will know that you went past the checks. They might have a look. All they were allowed to do was have a look at your passport, check that that's you, and they've got to let you go. Now, because of what we requested, they have to check you, they have to stamp your passport, they're supposed to check that you haven't spent more than 90 days in any 180 days in the European Union. They're supposed to check you've got enough money, you've got somewhere to stay, you've got a ticket out of France. Those are all things that we helped to put in place when we were members of the EU and to which we are now subject. Effectively, we've got a border which is as hard as the EU border with Russia or with Turkey, at our request.
So, Simon, what is your advice, honestly, if you're going away this summer, maybe with your kids on summer holiday, and you've looked at all this travel chaos and thought, well, just wait and choose something last minute. What's your best bet for a stress-free experience?
OK, well, there are lovely parts of the UK, of course, and those, I think, will be looking increasingly attractive. Very simply, if you are doing a really sensible thing with the cost of living crisis, and putting everybody in the car and just going camping in France, then you're probably going to want to look at something like Newhaven to Dieppe or one of the crossings from Portsmouth or Plymouth, because there all the controls are on the French side, so there's never going to be a hold-up like this. As we were hearing in the news, lots of airport staff very unhappy, lots of uncertainty there. In fact, the peak weekend in the skies wasn't too bad at all the major airports. 1 or 2 cancellations, lots of long delays, particularly last night coming into Gatwick, but actually not too bad. And it's worth reminding everybody that the vast majority of families will get away for that much-needed, well-deserved break. It's just looking at the scenes of chaos. It's one thing after another, and of course, day after tomorrow, we've got another national rail strike.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I'm supposed to be going to Devon later on in the month, and you're looking at booking your trains and everyone else who's going, and you think, well, some people have just had rotten luck because they booked their train ticket on the day there's going to be a train strike, and it's going to be a real headache for them to get there.
Yes, and let's just make sure everyone is aware of what happens. So this is members of the RMT union working for Network Rail and working for 14 train operators. They're unhappy about pay conditions and guarantees on jobs. And they are going to be walking out on Wednesday. Now, that has a massive effect, mostly because of the Network Rail signallers. They can bring in non-union staff and management to cover some of the network, but ultimately only about 1 in 5 trains is going to be running, and it's predictably going to be to and from London on the main intercity routes, some commuter stuff around London, Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds and Scotland. But in general, the rule is do not try to travel. Miserable times. Got another 2 strikes in the 18th and the 20th of August by the RMT, similar national strikes, and then 8 train operators are going to have the train drivers walk out next Saturday. They're working for ASLEF. So, I mean, I think that Eamonn may, like me, possibly remember the 1980s, and it does feel increasingly like that every day.
You wouldn't really blame people for saying no holiday this year, because there's also a cost of living crisis as well. Yeah. And that's going to be maybe your single biggest saving that you're going to make. But we were just saying the roads are unpredictable, the rail lines are unpredictable, airports are unpredictable, the ferry thing, you wouldn't want to be sitting for 21 hours with family and whatever. And we were talking about cruise ships seem a good bet at the moment.
Yes, they do. Still got COVID tests with most of them. And so therefore, if you, unfortunately, with so much COVID around, if you happen to test positive when you are just queuing up at Southampton, you won't be going anywhere. But yeah, there's a lot of demand for cruise ships. It's just so sad that for so many people, it's their first break for 3 years. And it looks as though it's all going wrong. And my heart goes out to anybody who was caught up in the chaos. And I just hope that they're now in France, maybe heading down to Spain or Italy, and finally able to enjoy themselves.
Well, we hope so. Thank you, Simon.
Can I just ask Simon one final question? Simon, if you're listening on the radio, he's brought in his passport as a prop. There can't be any blank pages in your passport left, Simon, because you're away twice or 3 times a week.
So I've got a few old stamps, but actually...
so they can do multiple stamps per page?
They can do, but although the one that I mostly use for Europe is now filled up. Do not believe the urban... Oh, sorry, I've got another passport as well. I'm not a spy. I just need it. But, of course, if you've got an Irish passport or any other EU passport, then you're in luck. You're just breezing through everything. However, if your passport does fill up, they're not going to refuse you access to Europe. They will go and find a piece of paper and stamp that and put it in your passport.
I see, because there's delays getting your passports now as well, aren't there? Well, Simon, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Simon Calder there. OK, look, we're going to hit the break, and when we come back, we'll be finding out what's behind the trend of over 50s going back to work. A lot of people think they enter into the retirement, but they're having to work harder than ever. Why is that? Here's the weather.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and it's a cooler and fresher day than yesterday with some sunny spells and scattered showers. Let's take a look at the details. So a mixture of sunny spells, an area of clouds and a few light showers across southwest England at lunchtime. Feeling fresher than Sunday though, with a brisk northwesterly breeze. The odd shower for southeast England too, and it's still going to be quite warm, but temperatures will be down several degrees than what we saw yesterday, and it's going to feel less humid too. In Wales, there's a fair amount of cloud in the sky likely, but a few bright spells here and there. A scattering of light showers is also likely. Maybe one or two heavier showers across the Midlands. They'll be moving quite swiftly though with that brisk northwesterly breeze. It's going to feel fresher with temperatures around 19 Celsius. Yorkshire and northeast England are going to see increasing amounts of showers, some quite heavy by the middle of the day. The odd rumble of thunder can't be ruled out, especially further to the north. Some more general rain, again heavy, perhaps quite thundery at times, will be pushing south through southern Scotland this lunchtime. There will be some brighter skies though that should follow on from the north. For most of Northern Ireland, it's a much drier prospect this lunchtime compared to yesterday. Still a few showers to dodge, and it's feeling quite cool with temperatures of just 16 Celsius in Belfast. So the chance of further showers for many parts of the UK for the rest of the afternoon should become drier into the evening. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Truss and Sunak launch fresh attacks on each other ahead of a crucial leadership debate tonight.
Hello there, very good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on this Monday morning, 25th of July. You tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright.
Well, let's give you an overview of what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak will attempt to close the gap between himself and his rival Liz Truss as they go head-to-head in a BBC debate tonight.
The two candidates clashed yesterday over defence and immigration policies, with both launching new hardline plans to protect UK borders.
The NHS is facing its worst ever staffing crisis, putting patient safety at risk. This is according to a new report that say recruiting issues and mass resignations have left now a shortage of 12,000 doctors and more than 50,000 nurses and midwives.
And holidaymakers are being warned that long waits at Dover will continue throughout the summer due to surging demand and more border checks. It comes after a third day of serious disruption that left some families waiting up to 21 hours in traffic queues.
Well, please do get in touch, particularly if you were caught up in any of that snarled traffic over the weekend. You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or drop us a tweet at gbnews.
A lot of... Going to bring this up now in various interviews we're going to be doing. Like, here's George saying the travel chaos is due to the French going slow to punish us for Brexit. That seems to be a widely held belief. Our top story this morning is Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are having another debate tonight. Well, it's their first, like, solo...
Head-to-head,
yeah. So this is on the BBC tonight. The Conservative leadership election turns tougher and tougher, one would have said.
Yeah, bitter. On Sunday, the two clashed over immigration. Both of them have launched their own plans to protect the UK's borders.
Liz Truss promised to sign more Rwanda-style schemes with African countries, while Rishi Sunak vowed to cap the number of migrants able to enter Britain.
The focus today is expected to be on the NHS after that report that we've been telling you about revealed the health service is facing its worst ever staffing crisis.
OK. Let's, first of all, we've got a couple of people to speak on this. First up, the Education Secretary, there's James Cleverley, who's supporting Liz Truss for leader. James, good morning to you.
Good morning, Eamonn. Good morning.
How do you feel about tonight? Are you excited about tonight? Because a lot of people are saying 5 weeks of this for something that obviously most people can't even vote for or take part in.
Well, I do think it's right that we test the future Prime Minister of this country. Now, one of the reasons I'm supporting Liz is because I've seen how she's worked as Foreign Secretary, I've seen how she's conducted herself on the world stage, I've seen how she's taken long-standing, consistent positions on China, for example, on making the most of the fact we've left the European Union. But a lot of people won't have seen all that detail, so I think it's right that they see them both, and I think it's right that they're tested. They're tested on whether their ideas are deliverable and also whether those ideas are long-held ideas. And I think that's an important point of it. I do hope that it doesn't end up with them being forced by the broadcasters to take chunks out of each other. I don't think that's a particularly great idea, but I do think it's important that people see the future leader of this country.
So, which broadcasters force them to take chunks out of each other? Broadcasters can't make them say what they're going to say.
Well, look, you're an experienced broadcaster. That the way you frame a question, the way you come with follow-ups, can encourage either a collegiate debate or quite an unsightly tussle. I really hope that the candidates are given the opportunity to say what they believe, to answer the questions fully. I think that Liz has got an outstanding track record over many, many years on some of the issues that are facing the country today, and I really hope she has the opportunity to explain those fully. But as I say, the people hosting these debates have a big influence on the tone of the exchanges, and I hope that the debate is structured in a way that both candidates are able to speak openly and freely rather than being goaded into some kind of gladiatorial political tussle.
James, it's interesting that you raise this point in general, and there are pressures on interviewers to please their peer group or, to be gladiatorial, as you say there. We had the privilege of having Liz Truss on the show last week, and I'll tell you what I thought, and I think what the viewers thought at the end of that. They felt she had a chance to talk, and they felt they had a chance to get to know her. They felt they got a chance to hear about things that weren't just politics. And you know what? 82% of them decided that they liked her. Now, whether they were going to be 82% of the membership or not, I'm going to say to you, if she continues in that way and she's interviewed in that way and we get to see the real Liz Truss, would you accept that this election is hers to lose?
Well, look, what you've just said doesn't surprise me. I've known Liz for decades, and we've been good friends, so I think it's only fair that I'm open about that. So I had a positive predisposition towards her running as Prime Minister anyway. But what's really struck me is, as I say, working with her in the Foreign Office, seeing how she's dealt with the incredible difficult situations that we are faced with internationally. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, China's economic leverage in the developing world, and a whole load of other issues too numerous to mention. But on top of that, of course, I've seen the more private, personal side of her. You know, the fact that she is incredibly clever, but also she can be very, very light-hearted and fun to be with. And I really hope that through this process, people will get to see not only the tough side of her that's been dealing with these international crises that we find ourselves in the midst of, but also that human side, the side that I see. And I think that combination is exactly what we need as a future Prime Minister.
I think at the minute people might like a bit of tough going on. David in Lincolnshire saying, we're talking about the border queues at Dover. And he says, it's not Brexit, Eamonn, causing the delays at Dover, although I'm fairly sure the French are deliberately understaffing and going slow. And that's replicated again and again and again by what we're seeing coming in here. People believe this is a bit of a French conspiracy. Well, what can we do? Do you think this is Brexit? Do you think this is a natural consequence? More severe checks on your passport, more boxes to tick, or do you think this can be improved?
It definitely can be improved, and it is in the hands of the French authorities to improve it. Liz has spoken with her opposite number in France, who's the former French ambassador, and we know her well, and she knows us very well. It's worth remembering, all those people trying to blame this on Brexit, that we were never part of the Schengen free movement area, and so there have always been passport checks for British people going into France and vice versa. So the delays that we are seeing should have been predicted. We know that people were keen to go on a holiday after many limitations because of COVID. Staffing levels should have been higher. Obviously, we need to work together with the French to resolve this, but some of these simplistic kind of it is definitely because of Brexit are frankly wrong. This will come through diplomacy. Liz is a cracking diplomat, we've seen that, and I'm sure she will continue working with and encouraging our French counterparts to improve the situation at the Dover-Calais crossing.
So Liz Truss could be the woman, folks, to save your holidays. What do you think? Get in touch with us. GB Views at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News. James Cleverley, thanks for your time this morning. He's Team Truss, and the debate is tonight on the BBC. Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Well, right now it's coming up to 10 minutes past 7. Let's hear from the other side of the camp. MP Kevin Hollenrake, for MP for Thirsk and Malton, who's a supporter of Rishi Sunak. Thank you very much for your time. Look, going into the debate tonight, Rishi Sunak's got quite a lot of ground to cover. If we look at the polling of the Conservative Party membership, he's coming out far behind Liz Truss. Why is that? Why hasn't he managed to generate the same level of support?
Well, good morning. As Rishi himself says, you know, he's the underdog in this race, but it's great to have the opportunity to set his stall out. In my view, he's by far the best candidate to be our next Prime Minister. He's got the intellect, he's got all the features we need from somebody who can beat Labour in the next election, which is crucial, of course. He is a genuine, authentic Brexiteer. That's the most important thing right now. I think we need somebody who understands Brexit, who campaigned for Brexit, and somebody who can make the most of it. Because I think there's a world of opportunity out there, but we need somebody who can really deliver on that opportunity.
But can he deliver on that messaging? Because, well, the question I ask you is, why do you think the party aren't supporting him? He's laid out that stall already, but for some reason it's not gaining traction.
Well, I've got to say, my own experience in my constituency, and I'm a North Yorkshire Member of Parliament, neighbouring Rishi. I've known him for a long time, since we both entered politics, national politics. But my membership in my polls is well ahead of Liz. So we'll see what happens on the big poll, which obviously the results of which are announced on September the 5th. But my members in my recent poll were supporting Rishi by a factor of 3 to 1 over Liz. But this is a national poll, of course, ultimately, and we've got to make sure that he gets across the line. But most important thing is we need somebody who understands the economy, who's got a track record of delivery in the most important battle we've got right now, which is inflation, of course, and the cost of living. Rishi's proven himself time and time again over the last 2 years, dealing with two huge crises in this country. First of all, the COVID crisis, and now the cost of living crisis. I think he's got the intellect and the ideas and the ability to innovate and implement, which is absolutely critical in all walks of life, but not least politics.
What do you make of some of the criticisms of his persona? Number one, that he's sort of too slick and not so approachable and too polished. And the second one being that he really was part of the manufacturing of the downfall of Boris Johnson.
I hear this stuff about being too slick. If people mean is he too good, I think he's really, really good, actually. And in terms of his personal characteristics, he's the first a cabinet minister I have known who knows my kids' names. They all love him. I've seen him in his constituency talking to people of all different backgrounds, different ilks. He's fantastic with people. He's just a really decent, honest, straightforward person, in my view. He's got real personal ability to connect with people personally, as well as to express his ideas and articulate them very clearly. So no, I don't really get that characterisation of him. So in my view, he's the right person. So he's got the right personal characteristics as well as the intellect and the ability to innovate.
We talk about his sort of personal characteristics, but the weekend really has been one of robust sort of mudslinging, both candidates really attacking the other. If you just take yourself out of the sort of ready for Rishi camp for 1 second and just talk to us as a Conservative MP, are you nervous about the optics of what this is doing to the Conservative Party for the public at large?
Well, listen, this is bound to be a robust debate, and it should be about the issues, not about the personal. It shouldn't be about personal attacks. I've got to say, one of the TV debates I saw a couple of weeks ago, the presenter asked the audience who was more likely to vote Conservative after hearing that debate. There was more candidates involved at that stage, and I think, surprisingly, I think from the presenter's perspective, 10 people raised their hands and said they were more likely to vote Conservative. So I think as long as it's about the issues and about the ideas, that's welcome to have that robust debate. But it shouldn't be personal attacks. And I haven't seen too much of that, to be fair. I think it's been about who can actually take the country forward, which is exactly what I believe Rishi can do at this crucial time. You know, it's really about delivery. If you listen to Rishi speaking, whether it's about immigration, about his policies on China, I think he's got those ideas. Crucially, it's not just about ideas, it's about the ability to implement. And if you see what Rishi's done in terms of running the economy, implementing all those schemes that help businesses and protecting millions of jobs over the last couple of years, he's got the ability not just to think about the ideas, but to put those ideas in practice.
One issue you haven't mentioned there is the NHS, and this report is on the front cover of many of the papers talking about the greatest staffing crisis to the NHS. Just briefly, Rishi will have the floor tonight at the debate. What's his pitch to say, I'm going to protect the National Health Service?
Well, he's shown he's put a record amount of money into the NHS, of course, another £40 billion over the next in this Parliament to make sure we can tackle the backlog and tackle some of the staffing crises. There is basically a labour shortage right across the economy. That's really, really tough right now. But I say Rishi's the person who can come up with the ideas and implement them. I think crucially what we've got to do is make sure the NHS is more efficient, that it's less managerial, more practical, delivers more from the money we have available. It can't just be about more and more money. It's got to be much more efficient than it is today, and that's really about putting best practice management in place. Rishi's got an MBA from Stanford University. He understands what we need to do to make sure we can do that, but just needs that time and the opportunity in number 10 to be able to put these things in place. But there's no doubt it is going to be a tough battle on many different fronts over the next few years. And that's why we need the right pair of hands, a safe pair of hands, to be able to take this forward.
Right, laying out the side for Ready for Rishi. Kevin Hollenrake MP, thank you very much for your time as well this morning on Breakfast.
Up at the time, it's 16 minutes past 7. Here is the latest news situation. MPs have warned there's a serious risk to patient safety as a result of the greatest staffing crisis in the NHS's history. A report today has revealed that the health service is short of 12,000 doctors and 50,000 nurses and midwives.
47% of women admit to not doing any vigorous exercise over the past year. In an online survey for Nuffield Health, many women said they'd simply gotten out of the habit during lockdown. The figure was a little lower for men at 34%.
More than 2 in 5 airport workers are considering leaving the industry, according to new research by job site CV Library. A survey of 1,700 workers found they wanted better pay, less stress, with 2 in 3 saying they haven't had a pay rise in the last 12 months. We're now going to talk about older people returning to the workplace, either choosing to or having to, as the cost of living crisis continues to bite. Well, living costs, a large proportion of the increase has been driven by men over 65 years of age, amazingly.
It's a report called Rest Less. They're a digital community for over 50s. We can speak to their chief executive, Stuart Lewis. A very good morning to you, Stuart. Just explain to us then, why is it that a large percentage of people who might have thought, OK, it's time to retire, have thought, actually, I'm going to head back into the office or workplace?
Firstly, to put in context, what we're seeing is due to rising life expectancy and declining fertility, workers in their 50s and 60s have driven most of the UK's employment growth over the last 30 years, until suddenly when the pandemic hit, what we saw is that decades-long trend change, and due to a combination of health challenges, age discrimination in the recruitment process, and people using the pandemic to reconsider what they want from life and career, we saw that decades-long trend change. I think what we're now seeing is that older workers are starting to return to work again for the first time since the pandemic started, with many delaying retirement or even considering unretirement. And as you rightly said, over 65 seem to be driving a large part of this increase. So, for example, in a survey of our retired restless members, 1/3 of them said that they would consider returning to work or had already, with nearly half of those considering it, saying it was for a mix of reasons, including the social and wellbeing aspects, as well as to top up pensions or to protect against the cost of living crisis.
So people need the money, they need the dosh. They've also, Stuart, had a chance to sample retirement. Maybe they didn't like it.
Yeah, so if you think the pandemic has been an isolating time for many of us, actually, so from a social and well-being perspective, we often forget how much of our social network and connections are related to the workplace. So for anyone retiring cold turkey after 4 or 5 decades in the workplace, it can leave people feeling even more isolated. So now that things are opening up again, we're not surprised to see many people considering coming back into the workplace for the social and well-being aspects of doing so.
Sounds like they're working hard behind you. What is that sound?
That's probably my computer fan, unfortunately.
That's okay. At least the computer's working hard. Do you feel sort of encouraged that people are taking this situation into their hands and saying, OK, I'm going to do work, or more despair that people who wanted maybe a bit more time to relax, retire, are saying it's just not viable to do it?
We see a real polarisation, actually. So from a health perspective, we have a whopping 17-year gap in disability-free life expectancy in the UK. And that obviously leads to really polarised attitudes to and ability to work later into life. So for some people staying engaged, they've got no hope, no dream of retiring because they love what they're doing so much and they get real purpose and energy and social connections from it. For others, if they're struggling with health challenges and they're really physically, they find the job physically demanding, it can be a much less fortunate set of circumstances having to continue working to make ends meet.
Stuart, thanks for your input. Stuart Lewis is the chief executive of Rest Less. They conducted the research which says more and more men over 65 years of age are going back to the workplace, shunning retirement. Maybe they have to, maybe they just prefer to. Tell us your stories and get in touch with us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News.
Please do. Right now at 7:21. Coming up on the programme, we've got all the biggest sports stories of the day with Aidan McGee, including all of the football transfer news. That's after the weather.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and it's a cooler and fresher day than yesterday with some sunny spells and scattered showers. Let's take a look at the details. So a mixture of sunny spells, an area of cloud and a few light showers across southwest England at lunchtime. Feeling fresher than Sunday though, with a brisk northwesterly breeze. The odd shower for southeast England too, and it's still going to be quite warm, but temperatures will be down several degrees than what we saw yesterday, and it's going to feel less humid too. In Wales, there's a fair amount of cloud in the sky likely, but a few bright spells here and there. A scattering of light showers is also likely. Maybe one or two heavier showers across the Midlands. They'll be moving quite swiftly though with that brisk northwesterly breeze. It's going to feel fresher with temperatures around 19 Celsius. Yorkshire and northeast England are going to see increasing amounts of showers, some quite heavy by the middle of the day. The odd rumble of thunder can't be ruled out, especially further to the north. Some more general rain, again heavy, perhaps quite thundery at times, will be pushing south through southern Scotland this lunchtime. There will be some brighter skies though that should follow on from the north. For most of Northern Ireland, it's a much drier prospect this lunchtime compared to yesterday. Still a few showers to dodge, and it's feeling quite cool with temperatures of just 16 Celsius in Belfast. So the chance of further showers for many parts of the UK for the rest of the afternoon should become drier into the evening. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back.
Very nice to see you again.
25 minutes past 7, still to come on
You're so
today's...
happy for me, laughing all right.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to reveal why I was laughing. In about 20 minutes' time, our reporter Davy Donaldson is going to be on your doorstep in Leith in Edinburgh as the city gears up. I'm so excited about this for the legendary Fringe Festival.
Ever been?
Oh, many times.
Oh.
I absolutely love it. Comedy, singing, drama, acting.
Yeah.
It's like a normal day in my life, I have to say.
Big interview after 9 o'clock this morning. A man called Tom Bauer, and he's talking about a bombshell new book called Revenge, and it's on Meghan and Harry and their war between the Windsors. I mean, this is the book everybody's talking about, so we've got Tom Bauer on after 9 o'clock this morning.
And lots of you getting in touch. David, Tim, Julia, all about travel. Can I just say hello to Julia, who says, I'm an ex-Disney cruise ship member because travel disruption has been so chaotic. It's been bruising over the last few days, and Eamonn keeps pitching for cruises. Julia says, as an ex-cruise ship member, they're sailing as normal. They've all put in safety measures, and the ships are probably the most cleanest, hygienic places to go. Everyone gets tested. All crew members wear masks while on duty.
Yeah, Julia, I think hard to beat. You have to travel. You haven't travelled on a cruise, though?
No, I haven't, no.
With the bliss when you check in and then that's it, done, and you just wake up in a new place every day. That's the excellent part of all that, my view. Right, OK, now we're going to do the sport. And the back... And the back pages on this Monday morning, they stack up like this. We begin with rugby. This is in the Mail. Rugby in the dock. They talk about negligence and failure to protect players in the RFU. So it's a massive lawsuit. It's going to be launched today on behalf of 185 brain-damaged former players. The Mirror, Tuchel singing the blues. The Chelsea coach admits his side may not be ready for the season as Chelsea are hammered 4-0 by Arsenal in the USA. And in the Times, some joy at last for Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton celebrates his best finish of the season, coming second ahead of George Russell. That was at the French Grand Prix yesterday. And here today with the sport, we've got Aidan McGee. Aidan, very good to see you. The transfer news, Aidan, and we look at the football situation that Arsenal, Tuchel is getting his excuses in early here.
Yeah, it would appear so. I mean, it's an interesting strategy by Tuchel because I think he's got to be careful here, Eamonn, because he's not operating under Roman Abramovich anymore. He was the guy who appointed him. He's the guy who he won the Champions League under, 15 months ago. Yeah. It's a different set of rules now. Todd Boehly has come into the club. He's bought the club ostensibly from the government because of the sanctions with the Ukraine and Russia, etc. He's very hands-on. I'm amazed he hasn't come out and announced that he's going to be washing the kit. He's doing everything. And now Tuchel has come out after this 4-0 defeat and said, basically, we need more players. You're operating too slowly in the transfer market. We saw the unedifying episode of Rafinha going to Barcelona when Chelsea thought they had him from Leeds. Rafinha scored the goal of the weekend in a friendly for Barcelona against Real Madrid. He's hit the ground running already. They've been trying to get this guy, Jules Koundé from Sevilla, £55 million, but again, they're going to be facing competition from Barcelona because they've come in at the last and said they want to sign this player. Now, if you consider the players that Chelsea have lost, Andreas Christensen, Antonio Rudiger, both defenders, Romelu Lukaku, yes, OK, he didn't play very well last season. He caused a few problems with a few interviews that he did, but still a great loss nonetheless. He's going to do well at Inter Milan, you would think. They brought in Raheem Sterling, Kalidou Koulibaly. But the worst thing, if you're a Chelsea fan, from their perspective, is that he's questioning their mentality. And if you look at some of the players that are still in his squad, these are players, most of them, he didn't sign. Timo Werner, Christian Pulisic, Ziyech as well, because he didn't... They came into the club as attacking midfielders under Frank Lampard. They just have not produced. He's actually, you could argue that he's got a tune out of those players, despite some passengers in that squad. He's done very well.
But there's no doubt that Tuchel has done very well. Great man.
Without question.
Yeah, without question, the trophies that he's brought home. Meanwhile, Spurs went up to Glasgow at the weekend, right? And there was a bit of aggro there. They were playing Rangers.
That's right. I don't remember Rangers playing Tottenham at Ibrox since 1989. That was when Mo Johnson made his first appearance for Rangers, following one of the most controversial transfers in British football history. Now,
from Celtic.
It's from Celtic, absolutely, having pledged to join Celtic a week before. He posed in a Celtic shirt and then turned up in a Rangers shirt a few days later. However, that means that in 33 years since then, they've not played each other, certainly not at Ibrox that I can remember. There's no history between the clubs. West Ham played there last Wednesday. They showed enormous respect for Andy Gorham, the late death of the goalkeeper. Yeah, exactly. And it was a really joyous occasion in some ways, even though West Ham lost 3-1. Now, aggro appeared to be forming on the streets. I've got the name of the street here, Paisley Road West, just outside. A police officer was injured. There was an attack with street furniture, so I imagine that must be things like park benches or whatever you can pick up in the street. Yeah. There were 4 arrests. Police Scotland announced that there would be an emergency stop and search order throughout the city in the afternoon. There seems to be fans intent on causing trouble. Now, I know that Tottenham travelled there in numbers. As I say, it's a ground they've not been to for many years. A lot of their supporters, the new generation, would have wanted to take the ground off. But nonetheless, an unedifying episode just before the start of the season. It's a pre-season friendly, don't forget.
But of course, you know, for some supporters, it's entertainment, sadly.
Sadly, it is. I mean, it's a throwback to... I mean, you're more likely to have seen it in 1989, aren't you? But in that era. But nowadays, we seem to be picking up now and again. Rangers were guilty of a little bit of trouble at the Europa League final back in the summer as well. But it's not just them. There have been flashpoints all over British football in the last 2 years or so, especially around about the Euros. So Lewis Hamilton got a podium place at the French Grand Prix? Yeah, he did as well. That was decent. It was his 300th Formula One race. His team principal, Toto Wolff, believes he can go to 400, but he's not really in the running for the title this time around. That duel seems to be happening between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, Red Bull and Ferrari. The issue here for Leclerc is he was 43 points clear after 3 races. And now I've mentioned before that row, or that duel between Hamilton and Verstappen at the end of last season, it seemed to have more of a detrimental effect on Hamilton than it did Verstappen. Hamilton seemed not only did he lose the race, but he lost it in controversial circumstances. Verstappen, though, like a true champion, it seems to be that he got over the first one. He looks even stronger now. He's 63 points now in front at the top of the drivers' standings, Eamonn. So, I mean, he's odds on to win it. I mean, OK, there's 10 races to go. Leclerc made a really terrible error at the 11th lap as well. He went round a corner. He failed to control the car and he went off the track, and so it left it a bit of a read-through for Verstappen. You would think that Leclerc would have won that race. World Athletics Championships, another GB medal. Yeah, it was good, an 800 metres silver medalist for Keely Hodgkinson. Now, the issue here is, I mean, she was up against Athing Mu. It was, she's the US Olympic champion. You know, it was a hell of a performance to get a silver then. But the day before, I was commenting on the 4x100 metres relay. Jonah Efaloko, Reece Prescott, Jarnell Hughes and Nathaniel Mitchell-Blake. Now, I'd only heard of one of those players, or one of those competitors. Yeah. Now, that's the issue here, is that when I was growing up, it was Chris Akabusi, it was Roger Black. It was on mainstream telly, it was on... Yeah, but when the broadcasters and the sponsors, Eamonn, cannot guarantee the sanctity of those races, and that shows the damage drugs can do to your sport. This isn't even the 4th story on the BBC website this morning, and it shows just how far athletics has fallen, without doubt. I agree with you. I remember Friday night was Athletics Night on the BBC, and used to have all those things, and we used to get great coverage, but... I'm not convinced that the average punter on the street, who would have had a passing interest in athletics 30 years ago. And don't forget, these guys are achieving even more on the actual track. They don't know who they are. I don't think they know who they are. I don't know if they know where to watch it as well on terrestrial television. Agree with you on both points, Aidan. Look, finally, just any transfer news. I always look and see, well, what's happening? Is Ronaldo staying or going? What about this Frankie de Jong? What's going on there between him, Barcelona and Man United? What have you got to tell us? We mentioned Jules Koundé, the guy that Chelsea want to sign from Sevilla. Barcelona are now interested in him. Now, that may offer a key to getting Frankie de Jong off to Manchester United, because they need to relieve themselves of one key earner. I don't know if you know that Barcelona have secured this very peculiar financial model. They've basically borrowed a load of money based on future TV rights. Remember when Leeds United did this 20 years ago? Did they? They did it on future Champions League appearances, when they'd only had one campaign in the Champions League. Barcelona know they're going to get those TV rights, and so it could be a way for more established clubs who don't have the nation-state money, like Manchester City and Newcastle, of course. It may be a way for them to compete in future. But nonetheless, it's hugely controversial, and it's blowing clubs like Chelsea out of the water. Now, nonetheless, they can't have all these top earners on their books at the new camp. Frankie de Jong is probably going to have to be pushed out. If I was Man United, though, I'd be pulling away from this transfer in a flash. If you have a player who doesn't want to play for you, and you've known for a month now that he's not exactly beating apart to Old Trafford, he's been moaning about the weather, unfortunately. He's also been saying about he's confused by the frantic running of the club. That was his quote in the Dutch media at the weekend. Now, yeah, OK, you can probably say he's got a point, but nonetheless, if you're Manchester United on July the 25th, 2022, do you want a player who doesn't want to play for your club? I'll be looking at plan Bs, and I'd rather have a player who wants to play for us, even if I think he's 10% inferior to the player you really want. Good man, Aidan. Thank you. Appreciate that. Aidan McGee there. He'll be back with the newspapers again tomorrow.
And coming up here on the programme at 25 to 8, we're going to be going through the papers with Emily Carver and Christopher Biggins. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. It's time to go through the papers. Eamonn's just a little bit busy, preoccupied, hungry. Let's look at the stories in the...
I don't know the half of it. How do you get fed, watered, relieved, all in 2 minutes during ad breaks? So my dream on this show is to have 5-minute ad breaks.
No, that would be awful. 5 minutes. Well, you'd have plenty of time then. But let's busy ourselves now, because joining us again in the studio is actor Christopher Biggins and Emily Carver, columnists at Conservative Home, to go through the newspapers for the second time this morning. And let's start with the Commonwealth Games taking place in Birmingham. Eamonn just said we haven't heard much about them, and maybe we should have done.
Surprise to a lot of people that they're actually taking place.
And opening this Thursday, big opening celebrations. And I think it's great that Birmingham has them. And I think it's great that they're going with the Birmingham accent, which I think is a terrific accent and very much part of that area. So I think
what do you mean going with the accent?
Well, I mean, they're not going BBC sort of, you know...
Received pronunciation.
Yes, it's very nice to be here.
Are they going to have Alison Hammond commentating, or what's happening?
No, well, funny enough, Alison Hammond is going to do the announcements of the various venues.
Oh.
Yes, but I think, you know, it's otherwise the BBC would put their touch on it, wouldn't they? You know, the sort of very, very British, English sort of thing. And I think it's good that it's a local... and I love Birmingham. Birmingham is a great city. And I think it's good.
Where's the arena? Do we know where the arena is?
No, I don't know. It's somewhere in Birmingham.
So I guess you're not going.
No, I haven't been invited. Have you been invited, Eamonn? No.
I haven't been invited. The last Commonwealth Games I went to were in Manchester.
Ah, well, you were invited there, I know.
I was invited there, yeah. So that's very lovely, and it rained, and it was lovely. So
yeah, very nice. Was it same time of year?
Same time of year, yeah. Let's go to the Tory leadership contest. So I don't know who'll win the medal there eventually. The Express says, Liz Truss, my tax breaks will boost Britain.
Yes, so obviously one of the key things that they've been debating, Rishi Sunak and Liz, is taxes. But Truss is going to go further with her idea for investment zones, which essentially is a bit of a spin-off of the free ports idea. So there'll be towns and cities, apparently, where there'll be benefits of starting a business. So that might include lower taxes, that might include lower regulations.
They used to be called enterprise zones, Emily. I don't know if they still exist, but they did this in Liverpool under Michael Heseltine. They did it in Belfast as well. I'm not even sure if those still exist or whatever happened to them.
Yeah, so it's very much a rehash of that policy. I think we do have a couple of free ports currently, I believe, but this would be an expansion. But Sunak has got a bit miffed by this because he said, essentially, you're just rehashing my free ports policy, which was one of his flagship policies too. But this is something that's come up time and time again. It's one of those policies that many economists think is a good idea.
Well, if it is a good idea, it's a good idea. It doesn't matter who implements it, doesn't it?
Well, quite exactly. But Sunak's saying, you're stealing my ideas, apparently.
Do you think we're going to see that kind of conversation this evening? I hope not.
Well, I think so, because, I mean, China's been a big thing. Apparently, in the papers yesterday and then again today. Liz Truss saying that she's going to be hard on China. Then Sunak saying, what? You're not hard on China? And then she's levelling that accusation against Sunak as well because he wanted closer economic ties with China. And then Truss is presenting herself as this hard line in terms of foreign policy. So I think it's just going to be toing and froing because, to be honest, there isn't that much between them policy-wise.
But personality-wise, there is.
Personality-wise.
And is that what the debate tonight's actually going to be about?
I'm sure it is. I mean, that's going to be it. The real thing tonight will be the personalities coming through.
Yeah, to be fair to Liz Truss, she has got better at presenting herself, but that was from a bit of a low bar. So perhaps she'll bring some more personality tonight. Rishi Sunak just comes across as very corporate, very competent, very serious, but he does have a little bit of charm, which may come across nicely. We'll see. I'm not too excited about the candidates, to be honest.
So there was a... you think it's tough between those two in a battle, but there was a chess game in Moscow and a child was playing a robot. What happened, Biggins?
Well, the robot was very nice, and I think it might have been winning at that particular point, but then it suddenly went mad and broke the fingers of the child that it was playing with.
Sore loser.
Sore loser. I mean, and I like this Sergei Lazarev, the president of the Moscow Chess Federation, told Russian state news agency TASS, this is, of course, bad. So that's, at least he knows it's bad.
Yes. So was this mid-game? Was it at the end?
No, I think it was mid-game. I mean,
so did they continue to the bitter end?
No, I think the child had to be taken away and put into a hospital because broken fingers isn't the nicest of things. They say it's an unfortunate accident, but chess officials have other theories, which is interesting. So, you know, things are moving on in Russia. Not quite the way we'd like them to move on, though.
Well, artificial intelligence, who knows where it's going?
Yes.
They'll be breaking next. Emily, we need some sort of robots or artificial intelligence in the hospitality industry. I was in Guernsey last week and restaurants closing down because they had absolutely no staff to work there.
Yeah, this is a sad story. So the number of restaurants falling into insolvency has jumped by more than 60% in the past year. They're saying worker shortages and, of course, the fact that people have less money to spend in luxuries like restaurants and cafes and bars and so on. So it seems to be that these two things have combined to make it very difficult for restaurants to stay open. And, of course, pubs and other hospitality venues are very much affected by all this. In terms of staff shortages, that may, of course, be linked to the fact that we no longer have free movement with the EU, but also because these jobs are very low paid often. And it's very difficult for people to live in city centres with our housing crisis on such low wages. I think that's one of the things in London that's very difficult. You know, where are all these people who are on such low wages living? Because you look at rents in London, and unless you're squeezed into one room, you're going to be spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds a month on just a small room in a shared flat.
But we all assume or we take for granted that we will have bus drivers and we'll have street cleaners and we will have people that work in the hospitality industry and all sorts of, you know, right across the board. How on earth can they actually afford there without social housing?
Yeah, well, I think the important thing, I would take a different view and say that it's planning restrictions and those regulations around where you can build and what you can build and whether you can build extensions and so on that are so stringent in this country that it's holding back, you know, the hundreds of thousands of houses we need to build every year if we're going to accommodate our population. So, but we're going to be seeing lots of our favourites, well, some people's favourites like Byron, Gourmet Burger, Carluccio's, etc., all shutting down their lots of their restaurants.
Have you been to a restaurant recently, any of you?
Have I been in a
restaurant? To a restaurant recently?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
What about the cost? Yeah, it's enormously expensive to eat out.
You think it's going up?
Oh, it's definitely going up. Wine has quadrupled. It is terrifying. You can't get a bottle of good wine for under £50. It's extraordinary. I don't know where they get these figures from. We have to now really seriously think about, let's have people round to the house rather than go out. We went to Regent's Park Open Air Theatre the other night and took a picnic. It is frightfully expensive.
Also, I've noticed that the service charge at some restaurants has gone up from the usual 12.5% to 14.5%.
Yeah.
Which is a big increase in your bill, actually.
And a strange figure.
Strange figure.
Why not 15%?
Yes. Yeah. Try to confuse you with the 0.5. Be like, oh, is that normal?
I was always useless at maths anyway. 14.5 to that. That's a difficult one.
You've always been a good tipper, though, haven't you, Eamonn?
I always have been. Yeah. Basically because people know who you are and they'll gossip about you.
You have to.
There is an end of an era coming up with Neighbours. Gosh, that was a very sad expression. Talk us through, though. We're going to have a reappearance, though, in the final episode.
We are. I mean, it's interesting. However many years ago it started, Neighbours, I was asked to write a review for The Sun newspaper.
Right, 87, I think.
Yeah, well, and I remember loving it. I gave it a glowing review because it seemed refresh, Australian, really good. Some of the English Australian dramas are marvellous, and this was a very good soap, I thought. But anyway, they're bringing Madge back. And, of course, Madge died in the series several years ago. She's coming back as a ghost to make her final appearance.
Is that a good idea or very silly?
Yes, she was a terrific actress. Bring her back in any form they can. I mean, I think it's going to be hysterical.
Why did she leave to begin with? Why was she written out of the...
Well, she probably wanted to leave.
She just wanted to leave.
Or they hated her.
She didn't actually die in real life, did she?
No, she didn't die. No.
Just to make that clear.
Just to make that clear.
But I think it's good, and I think it's... Friday's going to be marvellous. You can see it live as it happens, the last episode, and we've got Jason Donovan going back.
Margot Robbie's going back.
Yes, Margot Robbie. I mean, all of them, and I think it'll be hysterical. And then there's a big show on Channel 5 on Friday night, yes, about the whole history of the programme. Yeah. I mean, it has been extraordinary.
Yeah.
How
have you ever been in a soap, Biggins?
No, I could never do a soap.
Would that be beneath you?
No. Wouldn't be beneath me. I'd love it, but I just couldn't do that.
Yes, yeah.
The learning of the lines.
But they could bring you back as a ghost.
That would be good.
That would be good.
Yes.
That would require having already been in a soap to then return to. You need to make your first appearance not as a ghost.
Well, I did Rent a Ghost, a children's series years ago, so I could come back.
Series.
Oh, God, that was wonderful.
What a really good series.
Jeremy Swan was a wonderful producer-director, and we had such fun. Anne Emery, who was Ethel Meeker. Oh, there was some... It was just joyous. So I could come back as a ghost in that, a real ghost.
You could. That's like saying you couldn't have ghosts in A Christmas Carol. They never appeared until they appeared to
That's
Scrooge.
True. Yeah. That is true.
So believe me, Biggins can do ghosts. He laughs like one.
Yes.
Yeah. Labour, Financial Times, Emily. Labour in business charm offences. A Starmer senses a chance amid Tory strife.
Yeah, just in case those at home were wondering what's going on with Labour, because we're all discussing the Tory leadership contest so much. So Keir Starmer has a speech today in Liverpool, apparently, and he's going to be taking advantage of the fact that the Conservative Party is having a bit of infighting and that they're stalling and they're in a bit of a hiatus now while we wait for a new Prime Minister. So he's going to say, very different from what Jeremy Corbyn was saying, he's going to say growth is important and spending money wisely is important. And he's essentially trying to take the mantle from the Conservative Party as being the party of economic prosperity, growth, and jobs. So whether people trust him on this,
do you?
To be seen. I personally don't, because of course he was very happy to put Jeremy Corbyn into number 10. He was very much his right-hand man in many ways. So I don't trust him. But I think he may well be able to convince business leaders. Apparently his business forum is sold out in record time, so many businesses are interested to see what he has to say, but that may simply be because maybe the next Prime Minister. So
Emily,
they have to
thank
get
you.
in there.
Thank you very much indeed. Christopher, thank you. The guys will be back in 40 minutes' time. Let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise. Here's how it sits.
And you won't have missed it. The last two Conservative leadership candidates have been trading blows over immigration, China, tax cuts ahead of their first head-to-head TV debate later tonight. Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will face off for the first time after a weekend that saw both camps trading rather personal attacks.
MPs warn the greatest staffing crisis in the NHS's history is creating a serious risk to patient safety. The Health and Social Care Committee says research shows the health service is short of 12,000 doctors and 50,000 nurses and midwives.
More than 2 in 5 airport workers are considering leaving the industry, according to new research by job site CV Library. Well, they surveyed around 1,700 workers and found they wanted better pay, less stress. 2 in 3 said they hadn't had a pay rise in the last year.
And with the time at 9 minutes before 8, it's time for On Your Doorstep.
And Davy Donaldson is live for us this morning from Leith in Edinburgh. Very good morning to you, Davy.
Yes, good morning. I'm here in Constitution Street in Leith, and as you can see, it's a little bit of a state, and that's due to the ongoing tram works here. Decided to extend the tram works down to Leith to take in the area down the shore, which is actually the Dockland area. But of course, this is going to have a huge impact on businesses in the area, and you can see from what we saw outside that that's going to be very, very difficult for them, and also just recovering from the pandemic as well. So delighted to say I'm joined here by Murray Ainsley, the operations manager here. Murray, it must be very difficult given what we've seen outside.
I mean, in normal times, it would seem really challenging to have your road closed outside, to have the trams parked on your doorstep. But I think coming fresh on the heels of COVID, staff shortages, pandemics, etc., you know, it probably doesn't feel as tough as it might once have done. At least this has got a silver lining to come.
And how soon is that silver lining going to be?
We're told the silver lining, the reopening of our road, will be the tail end of this year. It's a pretty woolly timescale. I believe it's September, October is the sort of proposed timescale for the reopening of the road. And then I believe the trams are to be fully operational from spring of next year, which should make a massive difference to the area.
A huge difference. You're lucky, though, because you've not just got the Chop House here in Leith, you've got a few other ones uptown as well, and probably going to be pretty busy for the Fringe coming up next month.
I think it's going to be a pretty busy 4 weeks for us all. We've got 5 sites across the city, three of them the Chop Houses and 2 independent restaurants as well. So it keeps us on our toes the next 4 weeks, and it's fantastic to have it back in the city after a 2-year hiatus.
Indeed it will be, and of course you've got 2 on the Royal Mile, which is a great location, probably about as good a location as you could possibly have in the city.
The Royal Mile will certainly be chocker. We've been very busy with tourists already, which is fantastic. Seeing a lot of returning international tourism, which is absolutely brilliant to see. And it's going to be a fantastic month.
There we go. Murray Ainsley from the Chop House, so the other 4 restaurants as well, including Monteith's and the White Horse up in the Royal Mile. Looks like it's going to be a busy time for them. So they're just going to have to wait a little bit longer before things slowly get back to normal.
Oh, and I'm so excited for it. I was at the Fringe last year for GB News, actually, which was really exciting as sort of Edinburgh got back to normal. Davey, thank you so much. We'll be checking in with you in about an hour's time. The one challenge, though, that lots of the shops down the Royal Mile had was that they're really dependent on international tourists. And so without that sort of same level of people coming who are going to buy those presents, those that, you know, the kind of, you know, it might be a kilt or a tartan scarf. Without that sort of trade, they were saying, well, it's great that the Fringe is kind of getting a bit more back to normal, but we're still really struggling financially. So it will be really good to see how things kick back in now.
A Bring Back Boris petition was close to hitting 10,000 Tory members yesterday as anger mounts over the ousting of the PM. So what they've got a plan. So there's nearly 10,000 people, True Blues, who want Boris Johnson's name to be included on their ballots alongside Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. What do you think about that? Will that actually achieve anything, or does that just show up more and more weaknesses within the party, let us know. It's gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews.
And the ballots will be coming out very shortly, so, you know, there's not very much time to make traction on that. But as Eamonn said, do let us know. Right now, though,
it would be a kick in the ballots, that would, wouldn't it, if they stuck his name on that? Would be.
It would, but Look, I'm not a member of the Conservative Party, but you can understand why the membership might say, well, we didn't orchestrate this, and we liked Boris Johnson. Well, we can ask Andrew Pearce about this. He'll be joining us on the programme after the break. The inside track, though, as well, on the Conservative leadership election. They'll go head-to-head tonight. I think there's a little bit of a sentiment we're hearing is that, you know, there's a long way to go before we actually find out, 5th of September, who the next Prime Minister is going to be. And it might get a little bit boring in the meantime. Hopefully not tonight.
In the meantime? Anyway, here's the weather forecast.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and it's a cooler and fresher day than yesterday with some sunny spells and scattered showers. Let's take a look at the details. So a mixture of sunny spells, an area of clouds and a few light showers across southwest England at lunchtime. Feeling fresher than Sunday though, with a brisk northwesterly breeze. The odd shower for southeast England too, and it's still going to be quite warm, but temperatures will be down several degrees than what we saw yesterday, and it's going to feel less humid too. In Wales, there's a fair amount of cloud in the sky likely, but a few bright spells here and there. A scattering of light showers is also likely. Maybe one or two heavier showers across the Midlands. They'll be moving quite swiftly though with that brisk northwesterly breeze. It's going to feel fresher with temperatures around 19 Celsius. Yorkshire and North East England are going to see increasing amounts of showers, some quite heavy by the middle of the day. The odd rumble of thunder can't be ruled out, especially further to the north. Some more general rain, again heavy, perhaps quite thundery at times, will be pushing south through southern Scotland this lunchtime. There will be some brighter skies though that should follow on from the north. For most of Northern Ireland, it's a much drier prospect this lunchtime compared to yesterday. Still a few showers to dodge, and it's feeling quite cool with temperatures of just 16 Celsius in Belfast. So the chance of further showers for many parts of the UK for the rest of the afternoon should become drier into the evening. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Tonight on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Truss and Sunak launch fresh attacks on each other ahead of a crucial leadership debate tonight.
A very good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Monday, the 25th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright. Here's what's leading the news.
Yes, in stereo. That's what's happening. It's just when I'm with Isabel and we have a way of doing it. Rishi Sunak will attempt to close the gap between himself and his rival Liz Truss as they go head-to-head in the BBC debate tonight.
The two candidates clashed yesterday over defence and immigration policies. Both of them launched new hardline plans to, they say, protect the UK's borders.
The NHS is facing its worst ever staffing crisis, putting patient safety at risk. That's according to a new report saying recruiting issues and mass resignations have left a shortage of 12,000 doctors and more than 50,000 nurses and midwives.
And holidaymakers are being warned that long waits at Dover will continue throughout the summer due to surging demand and more border checks. It comes after a third day of serious disruption that left some families waiting up to 21 hours in traffic over the weekend.
You can join in any of our discussions, and you're doing those, and we're going to reflect on them in our next debate. It's GB Views at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GB News. Right, ahead of this big leadership debate on the BBC tonight between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, we are now going to talk about the debates turning increasingly bitter. On Sunday, the two clashed over immigration, with both launching plans to protect Britain's borders.
Liz Truss, she promised to sign up more Rwanda-style schemes with African countries. Well, Rishi Sunak's policy, he vowed to cap the number of migrants who are able to enter the UK.
So today, the focus is expected to be on the NHS, and that story we mentioned to you just a minute ago, after this damning Commons Committee report talks about how the health service is facing its worst ever staffing crisis.
Well, joining us now to find out more, Kat Neelan, Senior UK Political Editor at Insider, and also the Consultant Editor of the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, are both in the studio with us. Andrew, let's start with you. We have seen so much debate over policy, but tonight it will come down to personality, won't it?
Yeah, which won't be great for Liz Truss because she has many qualities, but she's not endowed and blessed with the greatest charisma, can we put it like that?
Au contraire, my friend. She appeared on this show last week and people loved her. They loved her.
I'm backing her for the leadership because I think she's experienced, she's been around a long time, she's got lots of ideas, but she is a bit wooden, to say the least. And Rishi Sunak, in my view, very polished, too polished. You can be too polished, I think.
Yeah.
So it would be the first. I hope tonight is a proper constructive debate and they don't engage in mudslinging, because we don't want that. We want a proper debate about the direction of this government, where we're going now. They've been in power for 12 years. They need to reinvent themselves, reheat, and so we'll see what happens.
Kat, is there anything coming out which Andrew's saying, reinvent themselves, giving us a direction, whether it's one or the other? How would government look under them?
Well, so far we've had a lot of sort of improvements being made to things that have already been announced, policies being built on from before. I think the China stuff that we're seeing today is probably the newest, but I kind of question the timing of that, because I think, you know, concerns about China are kind of quite well sort of trodden within Parliament. There's a lot of Conservative MPs that have expressed concern about China for a long time. But I do wonder, now that we're at the sort of Tory member stage of the race, whether that's really the right direction they should be going.
You're talking about the Tory member stage, but the wider public are looking at this, I think, with fatigue already, and we've got weeks of this to come.
We have, and I think fatigue in a sense of being observers and not having any kind of control over it, because at the end of the day, it is going to be just a few thousand people voting for it. But ultimately, you know, the test will come in a couple of years' time when we do have a general election, and if things aren't sorted out by then, you know, we're talking about the kind of chaos at Dover, people wanting to get away for their holidays, and then looking ahead to the autumn when we're looking at really kind of tough times. This is the kind of point at which people will be looking and making decisions about who they're going to vote for in 2023, 2024.
Andrew, the Dover situation, the backlog, the border controls, our viewers and listeners are very much of the opinion that it's revenge for Brexit.
Look, there's no doubt they've not forgiven us, the French. They just haven't. Macron can't bear it. And there were always checks coming in and out of France because we were outside the Schengen agreement. Those checks are now being enforced much more rigorously. They're taking 2 minutes, whereas before it would just show your passport. But also, there simply weren't enough staff on the French side. There's plenty of booths, but they're empty. And I think it is partly revenge for Brexit. And we've just got to knuckle down and get on with it.
But you see, I don't really see who this benefits. I mean, yes, revenge is sweet and all that, but you know, it's in the French interest to have that trade, to have that boost to their economy. And why don't we just get tough with the French coming into the UK?
Well, that's what we should do. I would. Apply the same rules. And then when the queues start there, Macron is an impotent president now because they've had an election for the French. He's won the presidential election, but the French Parliament has gone socialist and right-wing. He's got no power, so we could inflict quite a blow on him. But I think he's a spiteful president, if that's the right word. And he really hates Brexit. He hated Boris Johnson, so he's glad Boris is going. He won't like Liz Truss very much either. Another reason to vote for her.
Well, let's talk about spite, because tonight, Kat, both the candidates will go head-to-head for the first time, and the debates so far have been pretty bruising for the Conservative Party as a whole. Rishi Sunak accused of being too slick. What might we see from him tonight in a sort of maybe slick, maybe spiteful way to try and say to the Conservative Party, look, for some reason I'm behind in the polls, but take me seriously?
I can't see him dropping the slick persona. I don't know about you, Andrew, but that's his selling point, right? His competency is the main USP that he's bringing. I do wonder whether some of the sort of attacks will be more done at arm's length. We've seen quite a lot of nasty briefing over the last few days, but because of the sort of attacks that they did on each other at the actual debate were then used and packaged up by Labour. They were used by Keir Starmer during PMQs and done as an attack ad by the party itself. I wonder whether we might see slightly less vitriol in person.
I think that's right, and it should be, because it was. I mean, those broadcasts when there were 5 candidates slugging it out, they're mad to have agreed to it in the first place.
Yeah,
particularly with Channel 4. Yeah, and particularly with Channel 4 audience, which was always going to be packed full of lefties.
It's interesting you both talk about Rishi Sunak being slick. I mean, could I talk? I don't think he's slick. I think he's rehearsed, is what I would call him. Yeah. Bob Monkhouse was slick.
Yeah,
he was a genius. Yeah. You know what I mean? At being smarmy and whatever. I just think
so far a lot of the debate has been on his turf, right? It's been about the economy, so it's stuff that he knows really, really well. If it then shifts to foreign policy, you might see him coming unstuck a bit, because that's obviously not a brief that he's ever held.
Well, listening to this conversation is Peter Vaughan, a GB News viewer and listener from Sandwich in Worcestershire. And Peter, former teacher, but also Rishi Sunak supporter. So how are you feeling going into the debate tonight? Rishi's got quite a lot of ground to catch up on, particularly what we see from the polls. He's not gaining support like he is from you.
Well, I think Rishi Sunak is a bit like a racehorse on the rails coming up to the finish. I think he's going to attract a lot more viewers and supporters, and I think he's going to win. I just think Rishi Sunak is clearly ahead on the economic field. When you look at his background, I mean, he got a first from Oxford, he's a Fulbright scholar at Stanford. He's worked at Goldman Sachs. I agree with Andrew Pearce that Liz Truss isn't up to the character that Rishi has. She is a little bit wooden. She doesn't have quite his charisma and his background in economics. And I was watching James Cleverley this morning, and he was saying that Liz Truss is very, very consistent. Well, I disagree. I mean, she was an ardent Remainer some years ago, and she was in the SDP, and some of the comments that she made about Brexit in those days were very vociferous and dead against, and I don't think that shows somebody who's very consistent. So yes, I'm a Rishi Sunak man. I think he's going to come on strongly. I think it is a good move to bring his family, his daughters, his wife into the picture, whereas on the other side we don't see Liz Truss's children and her husband. I wonder why that is. I think Richie is going to win this, and I think he's going to win it well, because I think the vast bulk of people, especially Conservatives in the constituencies, I think those people are going to warm to him, and they're going to realise that he does have the edge by a considerable margin.
I would say it's quite interesting to bring his wife into the picture, Rishi Sunak, because she, until a few weeks ago, was a non-dom. She was not paying her taxes here. And when it was exposed that she was a non-dom, they quickly changed her status within 3 days. And that also reminds us that Rishi Sunak, until October, had a green card. He was keeping his options open in case he wanted to make his life in the United States. And we shouldn't forget, it's interesting as what our viewer just said there.
Peter.
He's put our, to say to Peter, this guy's put our taxes up to the highest level since the Second World War. What's great about that? That's not very conservative.
He had got a pandemic to deal with and furlough.
Yes, but, you know, things are changing, and I think there are big questions to be asked. I'm still not convinced that Liz Truss is quite right on the economy. I think we are at risk of having this kind of stagflation.
But do they, Kat, give me an insight here, right? So she can be good on lots of things. Does she not just have to have the big idea or principle, but she's got advisors all around her who says, this is what we're doing, and she'll go, oh, that sounds like a good idea, that sounds like a bad idea. Are the brains not elsewhere for this?
To it, right? You can't just sort of cherry pick things. There's got to be a sort of overarching package. What kind of Conservative is she? And so far we're seeing that she is sort of leaning more towards the Boris Johnson type Conservative. However, with the kind of low tax stuff that she's trying to bring out, you kind of wonder, really, is that going to appeal to the people in the red wall that kind of voted for a better sort of investment in our services, which are at really kind of danger point? You know, we see what's happening with the NHS right now. That's only going to get worse if you start cutting the tax.
How on earth has that been allowed to happen? That's just criminal, actually, that is.
I mean, you mentioned the NHS, but why is the NHS and the cost of living not front and centre of the debate tonight? Instead of, I mean, China, of course, important.
I agree, it ought to be. Bread and butter issues are what will win the next general election for the Conservatives or Labour. It's not going to be whose position's on, who's most hawkish on China. It's who's got a solution to the cost of living crisis, who can make sure waiting lists start falling. And, of course, Truss has to explain, if she's going to get rid of those national insurance rises, which I think she should, that money it was going to raise was going to go towards NHS waiting lists. So where's the money going to come from to tackle NHS waiting lists? She has to explain that tonight.
Yeah. Peter, those are the harsh realities of economics. There's a lot of the membership. There's a petition of 10,000 Tory members who want Boris Johnson put back on the ballot paper with these two. Would you be one of them?
No, I certainly wouldn't. I think the premiership of Boris Johnson in the last 2 years has been absolutely appalling, and I consider him to have been a bad prime minister. And it's just a shame, really, that in the last few months they've had to prize him out of Downing Street with a JCB. I'm not a Boris Johnson man, and I think talk of him coming back is absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you for that.
The damage that's been wrought to the Conservative Party, Andrew, is surely vast.
They'll get over this. Look, this happened before. We've replaced Tory leaders in mid-term. They have a leadership election. There's a lot of mudslinging. There's a lot of debate. Actually, some of it is rather good because we can see where the Conservative Party is going to go. They'll get behind the new leader. They'll unite. And don't forget...
Will they? Will they?
Yeah, they will.
After all of this, we're going to see the 5th of September, both sides.
They will, because the Conservatives have a great instinct. It's called survival. And they will want to survive, and they want to win the next, so they'll unite. And remember, they're up against a useless, boring Labour leader called Keir Starmer. He's boring.
I mean, that's undeniable, but, you know, after the kind of rocky, sort of dramatic few years that people have had, maybe there's more of an appetite for boring leadership than there has been for a while. I actually think we're probably in the sort of brown kind of era of this government. You know, we're kind of in the last couple of years the sort of dying embers of the Conservative government. I agree, Keir Starmer is not a strong opposition leader, but I think the way that the Conservative government is kind of imploding and sort of flinging mud in such a public sphere, I think will have long-term repercussions.
Kat, is there an appetite? We were talking to one viewer today about an alternative party, something she felt that there was no political party who represents her.
We've done this dance so many times, haven't we? I mean, I can't remember all the iterations of the sort of remaining sort of groups that kind of, you know, where MPs from the Tory...
Change UK.
Yes, we can't remember them all.
Change UK lasted 5 minutes.
Out, and not one of them got re-elected.
No.
So, you know, I mean, People do talk about this from time to time. Our system does not favour it, really.
Okay. But it's Nigel Farage. I'd be interested to see how he feels, see how this election pans out, because he wants to see that we get Brexit sorted out, and it's not being sorted at the moment. So is Truss more likely to?
Andrew Pearce, consultant editor of the Daily Mail. Kat Neelan, who's the senior UK political editor of The Insider. Thank you both very much indeed. Appreciate it.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. 8:15 is the time. Newswise, here's what's happening.
MPs have warned there is a serious risk to patient safety as a result of what they're calling the greatest staffing crisis in the NHS's history. It's details in a new report that today reveal the health service is short of 12,000 doctors and 50,000 nurses and midwives.
47% of women admit to not doing any exercise over the past year. In an online survey for Nuffield Health, many women said they simply got out of the habit during lockdown. The figure was a little lower for men at 34%.
More than 2 in 5 airport workers are considering leaving the industry, according to new research by the job site CV Library. A survey of 1,700 workers found they wanted better pay, less stress. 2 in 3 said they hadn't had a pay rise in the last year.
We'll take a break there, and then coming up after that, we're going to be talking about the NHS now facing its worst staff crisis ever. We'll be asking a GP's opinion after this short break.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and it's a cooler and fresher day than yesterday with some sunny spells and scattered showers. Let's take a look at the details. So a mixture of sunny spells, an area of cloud and a few light showers across southwest England at lunchtime. Feeling fresher than Sunday though, with a brisk northwesterly breeze. The odd shower for southeast England too, and it's still going to be quite warm, but temperatures will be down several degrees than what we saw yesterday, and it's going to feel less humid too. In Wales, there's a fair amount of cloud in the sky likely, but a few bright spells here and there. A scattering of light showers is also likely. Maybe 1 or 2 heavier showers across the Midlands. They'll be moving quite swiftly though with that brisk northwesterly breeze. It's going to feel fresher with temperatures around 19 Celsius. Yorkshire and northeast England are going to see increasing amounts of showers, some quite heavy by the middle of the day. The odd rumble of thunder can't be ruled out, especially further to the north. Some more general rain, again heavy, perhaps quite thundery at times, will be pushing south through southern Scotland this lunchtime. There will be some brighter skies though that should follow on from the north. For most of Northern Ireland, it's a much drier prospect this lunchtime compared to yesterday. Still a few showers to dodge, and it's feeling quite cool with temperatures of just 16 Celsius in Belfast. So the chance of further showers for many parts of the UK for the rest of the afternoon should become drier into the evening. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. It is 20 minutes past 8, still to come on today's programme.
At 8:45, Davy Donaldson, our reporter, will be on your doorstep. That doorstep will be in Leith in Edinburgh, speaking to the owner of a popular bar as the city prepares for the Fringe Festival.
And then after 9, biographer Tom Bauer will be talking about his new bombshell new book, Revenge, Meghan, Harry and the War Between the Windsors. Don't miss that.
Okay, you can join any of our discussions. You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or you can tweet at gbnews. When I look at you, that means speak.
It's me. The World Health Organization has declared that monkeypox is now a global public health emergency of international concern.
Now, this comes as a new report reveals that the NHS is experiencing the worst staffing shortages in its history. So are we ready for another health crisis? Let's speak to Dr. Anita Raja, a GP based in Birmingham. Anita, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Anita, I want to start off talking about monkeypox. Before we, it's a public health emergency. Is it really? Is it going to affect me? Is it going to affect Rosie? Is it going to affect you? Who is it an emergency for?
Everybody. It's an emergency for everybody. We've got to understand that the idea of declaring a health emergency is purely to spread awareness amongst people who may not be taking it very seriously, especially countries where there's not much awareness around monkeypox, where there isn't a big budget that is assigned to scientific research and vaccine development. Third world countries, we are in a very privileged position because we've got the smallpox vaccine that we're using and we've procured some, and we are spreading awareness and talking about this. But we've got to bear in mind that we're not the vast majority. There are many countries around the world that are still not taking it seriously.
I'm not taking it seriously, right? I don't believe I'm at risk from it in the slightest. Can you tell me how I am at risk from it?
See, the data that we have so far does suggest that the vast majority are men who are either in same-sex relationships or are homosexual or bisexual. But what we've got to understand is that the spread can be via close contact. It can be skin to skin. So anyone could be at risk. So if we are saying that only people who are in same-sex relationships and are men are at risk, then we're wrong.
Well, I'd love to see the numbers on it, that's all. I'm just not in favour of all this scare technique. If it is for the gay community, if it is for people who are bisexual, if it is for people who may be sexually promiscuous, then say so. But stop scaring the bejesus out of the rest of us. That's my view.
Well, what we've got to understand is that these people are human beings at the end of the day and have families, and they're not just hanging out with people from the same sex. They are probably are in close contact, sharing towels, clothing with other family members as well who may not be homosexual. So this is a problem. See, what we've got to understand is that we still are unaware of why there is such a speedy spread of this virus, and we haven't understood the mode of action this time. There are two strains of the virus, the West and the Central. The West is milder, and the West is the one that we're seeing in the rest of the world.
So whilst we don't understand, it's better being more cautious than less cautious. I get that.
100%.
Something that is causing real fears, the front page of several of the papers this morning, this new review talking about the staffing crisis in the NHS, talking about the need for about 12,000 more doctors, 50,000 more midwives and nurses. What do you see day to day? Do you see colleagues who just say, do you know what, actually, I'm not putting up with this anymore, it's time to call it quits?
I'm very pleased that finally the media is taking this seriously. This is not something that has happened overnight. This has been going on for years on end, decades and decades, but nobody has been taking this seriously. I mean, we've come up with different recruitment techniques, taking people from abroad, but the problem is not recruitment, the problem is retention. The working environment within the NHS is unfavorable. If I look at GPs alone, I'm a GP myself, the healthcare budget, from the healthcare budget, 11% was assigned towards GP surgeries, which would involve procurement, it would involve all the work and the facilities and, you know, the service that GP surgeries would give you. Now that has shrunk instead of going up with the inflation from 11% to 8%. They do more than 80 to 90% of the NHS's work on a 7%, just 7% workforce, and are expected to work and function on 8% of the budget. So, I mean, these are little things to the world, but I think there's a lot behind this. A lot of effort has been put behind this. I mean, the workforce is demoralized, and yes, people are burning out. I mean, if you pick up a paper, there's always something bad to say about your general practitioners. I mean, the language that's used is just appalling. And instead of encouragement, there's a lot of bashing. So, you know, people do want to leave it. We've got to understand people who work within the healthcare system are highly qualified, educated people, whether these are doctors or nurses. And it takes a vast portion of their life to get to where they are. And if they are deciding to leave the profession in the end, you can imagine how they actually feel and how burnout they are. We've got to look after our workforce.
Dr. Anita Raja, who's a GP from Birmingham, thank you for your take on those matters this morning. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Holidaymakers are being warned that long waits at Dover will continue throughout the summer due to surging demand and more border checks.
Yesterday was the third day of serious travel disruption that left some families waiting up to 21 hours in what was bumper-to-bumper traffic.
OK, a lot of this concerning you, affecting you. Travel editor at The Independent joins us now, and that is Simon Calder. Simon, Carol in Shoreham Beach, she says, are we going to get caught up in traffic making its way to Dover? That's now the worry, as even the back roads and lanes are mega busy.
That's a really good question. Let me tell you what the situation is and was. So things moving fairly smoothly this morning. Most of the backlog has been cleared. We're now onto the many, many hundreds of trucks that are on the A20 and the M20, which were part of the problem over the weekend because they all got stacked up on Friday. Now, what individual motorists have been doing once they got near either the Port of Dover or the Eurotunnel terminal at Folkestone was hit the back of the queue and think, well, I'm not staying here. They and their sat-navs rationally thought, OK, well, I'll go through this lovely leafy village. I'll find my way there. As soon as a significant number of people do that for a perfectly rational, individual reason, things snarl up and actually you get gridlock because Kent was never designed to be an EU external frontier in the same way that you have frontiers between the EU and Russia and Turkey. Nobody thought of it. And so, therefore, the road system simply cannot cope with a snarl up rather than this just continuous conveyor belt of cars, of trucks, of buses, of people going from Dover and Folkestone over to France. Things snarled up this weekend, and I'm afraid the traffic in those lovely leafy villages and towns also snarled up.
Now, your sat-nav wasn't really going to help you over the weekend. I think you might be able to solve some major arguments in cars over this week and families going on holidays. Waze or Google Maps?
Well, I took my bicycle. That was the only way I could see getting around the traffic. So, but very much ignore your sat nav. If you, and this is absolutely the line from Dover and from Folkestone, if you are diverted on a particular route to get to the port, to the terminal, stay on that diversion. don't start freelancing, because actually when individuals do that, everything snarls up, and you can just get a single roundabout, a critical traffic intersection completely clogged. Nobody's going to get through.
Yeah. What's it like this morning?
Things not too bad at all. Fairly free flowing as always. If you can get there really early, then you're going to beat the traffic. I was up and about around Kent about 5 o'clock in the morning, and actually you could have driven to the terminal in Folkestone or to the port of Dover. You then have a long wait, typically an hour or 2 hours to get through French passport control, but at least you'd be in the right realm. And basically, whatever time it says on your ticket, the ferry companies, Eurotunnel, are saying, just turn up, we'll get you on the first available service.
Yeah. A lot of people, no matter what you say or what anybody says, they believe this is a Brexit conspiracy. Britain's being punished for leaving the European Union. Keith in Salisbury, for instance, I'd like to know if Norway and Switzerland have the same problems entering the EU. I bet not. It's all about punishing the UK for daring to leave the EU.
Norway and Switzerland are both in the Schengen area, so there are no borders. That's what they chose. We chose to have to be third country nationals, which means that whatever your passport says on the cover about the European Union, absolutely not. We insisted in the withdrawal agreement that not only would we have our passports stamped, but they also have to ask you, Eamonn, have you got enough money to see you through this trip? How long are you staying?
Yeah.
When are you coming back? Can we see your ticket? Mm-hmm. Those are all the questions that the UK devised along with the rest of Europe when we were in the EU for third country
nationals. What was the disadvantage for us staying in the Schengen system?
Well, we were never in the Schengen area. We had this kind of semi-detached thing, which was for a lot of people working well. A lot of people would say it wasn't, they wanted to be closer. Other people would say, no, they like the new third country national status. But crikey, I don't want to start rerunning the whole Brexit debate. Yes. We voted to leave. It was a democratic decision.
Yes.
But certainly the withdrawal agreement, there were various different flavours you could have had. We chose a hard Brexit, which means that we got a hard border like they do in Russia and Turkey.
Did we choose the wrong flavour then?
Well, it all depends. There are many more things to life than travel. Certainly, I can see in the realm of travel all kinds of disadvantages of Brexit. But of course, people voted to leave on all kinds of grounds.
Well, we'll let you leave now, Simon. We appreciate that. Simon Calder from The Independent. He's the travel editor there. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Coming up here on the programme, we're going to be going through the newspapers, the stories inside with Emily Carver and Christopher Biggins. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
And with the time coming up to 25 to 9, it's time to go through the papers with the actor Christopher Biggins and Emily Carver. Emily's a columnist at Conservative Home. Biggins, we're going to talk heat with you. What a scorcher. This is in the Star, page 5.
I know, and it says parts of the UK drier than the Sahara. I love these comments. Every year they seem to happen. You know, we're drier than... We have no water. There's going to be a ban on hose pipes very soon. I mean, it's all disaster. I mean, I don't know if it's cooled down recently, hasn't it, the last few days?
I think another heat wave is on the horizon.
On the way? Oh, dear, oh, dear.
I wouldn't like to have been those holidaymakers queuing up for Dover, though, in their car for over 20 hours. That would have been just like being in an oven.
I've been in those queues for several hours, but never 21 hours in the heat with kids in the back.
Yeah.
I mean, must be a nightmare start to your holiday.
Just ghastly.
I've got an electric car, and it would have been a disaster for me because I probably would have run out of electricity.
Yes, that's probably true. That's true. Yeah, people don't talk about that. But you're right. I mean, there's no doubt about it that the ground is very, very dry. And houses that were not at risk previously as fire hazards, we now have to think of the vegetation that is around them and if it dries out.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean...
It's really bad. I mean, it's bad for everything.
Yeah.
I mean, the photograph that the Star have chosen to use is a farmer, clearly, whose crops are at risk, but the farmer is helping put the fire out.
Yes.
That's not their day-to-day job, but it may be if weather like this continues and intensifies.
Yeah, I think everybody on land, if you've got land, has to pull their weight and try and stop it. I mean, it's a disaster.
The only benefit is for our burgeoning wine industry in England.
Wine?
This hot weather is
wine, champagne.
Unless it gets burnt down, of course.
All sorts of things, right. Emily, this NHS crisis is also sobering, to say the least. NHS critically understaffed as 2/3 work part-time in the Telegraph.
Yes, this is a story we covered earlier, but this is a new angle, and something I was saying. There is a problem within the NHS of a lot of staff working part-time. And this affects patient care, of course, because a number of people I've spoken to quite recently who've been going through treatment for one thing or another, never see the same doctor or consultant or, medical professional. And that's something that's very difficult, particularly for elderly patients and maybe those with a dementia and so on. It's very important that there is some kind of continuity in your care. And this is why also so many people who are stuck in NHS waiting lists are spending all of their savings, potentially going into debt to go private. And this often happens, of course, when there are massive backlogs because people are waiting potentially years for things like hip operations, for things like knees, for treatment that should be basic and necessary.
OK, let me play devil's advocate here. Isn't it your civil duty, if you can afford, to take the burden off the NHS to do so?
Well, I guess it depends whether you think that your taxes should go towards certain benefits for yourself as well as everyone else. I think that people don't view it as their civic duty. I think they view it as necessity. And I think a lot of people will spend on private healthcare now, even if they can't really afford it. They'll forgo other luxuries because at the end of the day, health is what you care most about. And I mean, not to make the boring free market pitch, but I do think that the NHS, there needs to be some conversation about reform, which Sunak and Truss are dodging because obviously it's very controversial. But you do see in European countries that they have a social insurance scheme where they still have universal care, but there's more competition. Yes. I mean, we're so used to, you can get your food delivered in 2 minutes, but yet to get a GP appointment, it takes days and days. So it's not up to date, our system.
But we don't want to be like America. I mean, in America, if you're ill, unless you produce a credit card, you'll die.
But that's the other extreme.
Yeah. I think Emily's talking about if you fall below a certain threshold, then your care is free at the point of entry, and if you're above that, you may be asked to pay 50 quid or something like that.
Yeah, just insurance that would be a more sustainable funding model, because at the moment, nearly 40% of our day-to-day public spending goes to the NHS. And with our ageing population, I mean, how much of public spending do you want to go to the NHS? It could be over half soon.
We're very lucky to have it, and I think you're right. I think we should start to pay for what we're giving, or what we're getting, rather.
Back to the climate crisis, the newspaper.
I know, well, this is, again, going back to America, where they always seem to have it much worse than we do. Yosemite is burning. I mean, and thousands, 60,000, I think, 6,000 rather, people were evacuated recently over the weekend, and it is awful. I mean, this picture in The Independent is just a blazing house. I mean, it must be so distressing for people, because it seems to affect there more than it does here. I mean, I know we had the terrifying thing of last week. I think it was about 4 or 5 or 6 houses burning down in the heat, and that was terrible. But this is hundreds of houses. I mean, this is just awful.
I think we had 40 houses destroyed over the country last week.
That's shocking.
Was it as many as 40?
40, yeah.
Really? That's
You're not making that up, do you?
No.
It was. No, it was. And you know, the aftermath, going back, we've now seen cameras, reporters going back there and just seeing the remnants of people's homes, their lives.
Terrible.
Absolutely charred and in ruins. And you look at it and you think, it's happened once, it could happen again.
Yeah, exactly.
And people think it will happen again. And Emily, we're looking towards now in the Times, the Tory leadership contest. How unpopular do you think it would be if the candidates came up and the thing they talked about and their priority was the climate? Because net zero was something that all the candidates sort of slightly tussled with their views, but then suddenly we're in the middle of a heat wave in the party contest and suddenly realise, gosh, we have to take this seriously.
Yes, neither candidate, from what I've seen, have been talking about the climate crisis at all.
And why do you think that is?
Well, I imagine Liz Truss is ideologically opposed to the net zero targets because they favour, attempts to centrally plan our way out of climate change. And she would be more sort of pro-innovation. I mean, Kemi Badenoch, when she was still in the race, wanted to scrap the target altogether because, why have such an arbitrary target that by 2050 you need to have zero carbon? Rishi Sunak, I'm sure he's still committed to the net zero target. I think they both are on paper. But what they want to do, I don't know. But I do think whatever the government does in terms of carbon emissions and whatnot, I think the emphasis, because we have a limited ability to change the temperature of the planet, but what we can do is mitigate against things like this. They need to put forward planning, because, I mean, every year it seems like with the flooding, we know it's going to happen, and then yet there aren't the barriers in place or whatever needs doing to prevent floods.
And the argument will always be, Emily, there's not the money either. So it's like, whether it's the NHS or whatever, there's got to be different models, I think, thought up of how we actually fund these.
It's so hard, isn't it? Because where do you cut?
Yeah.
I mean, every time a government wants to cut some spending, there's outbursts of outrage and concern, but government's got to be about trade-offs, doesn't it?
Do you think this is going to change? If we look at the generation who are leaving university now, climate is far higher up their agenda than it has been, let's say, even 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So politically, it could become quite advantageous to say, I'm going to put the climate first.
Yeah.
We may have a situation where we've got more than one Green MP.
I think so, and within the Conservative Party, there are many groups. There's the Conservative Environment Network, there's Bright Blue, and these are groups within the Conservative Party that are very, very pro, doing something about climate change. So there is a big section of the party, but then, of course, there is a large section of the party who, think net zero targets are a load of rubbish. So it's balancing that.
Okay. Well, from heat to maybe making some people hot under the collar, we go to the Daily Mail. This is on page 21, and it's about a pair of underpants belonging to who?
Prince Harry. Yeah, this was during his Vegas trip in 2012. Do you remember when he played pool?
Yes.
And he played strip pool, I think it was. And one of the strippers received a pair of his black underwear, which she now says she still has, which I is debatable. But anyway, she thinks she might get £800,000 for them. So I'm offering mine.
No.
For £20.
Did he get many bids on those? I'm not sure.
Sorry,
no way.
£800,000.
£800,000 that she reckons she's going to get. But that's, I mean, anything now to do with the princes or the royal family, they think it's got, a wonderful trip down money lane. I mean, it's amazing.
He's been getting terrible press recently. You see Twitter, Prince Harry is always trending for various negative reasons. Either he's racist and they're bringing up his old... his old issues with dressing up as a Nazi or whatever, or they're bringing up the fact that Meghan is controlling him and whatnot. It really is not great for Prince Harry.
We have the royal biographer, the biographer in general, Tom Boyer, on at 9:15 this morning, whose book Revenge, I think it's called.
Yeah.
I just downloaded it on Audible, so I'm going to give it a listen.
I've just ordered it too, and I was on the other night with him. He was here, and he's
Harry?
No, Tom.
Tom Boy.
And he's a very nice man. We had dinner recently, but his book has gone to #1 in every listings. It's fantastic.
He's renowned as being so forensic about what he writes, his research and whatever. I've actually been in this room in the hotel where they played this strip poker.
Oh, really?
Not at the time they were there. But
what were you stripping off?
Just seeing how the other half lived. That's literally what the title of the programme was. And, but the idea that there would be a market. I think the lady who's selling these undies may have to lower her expectations.
I think she might.
Even the word undies is just a bit...
What do you use? Pants?
Underwear, maybe.
Underwear?
Yes.
Right.
And I certainly wouldn't be paying how much? £800,000.
Well, it's Prince Harry, remember? Does he do it for you?
I just want to prove that his
DNA.
DNA.
You're not going to do a DNA test. That's horrible.
She hasn't watched them, because I'm sure that gets a premium if they're...
By the way, we've had a collection in the office, and we've got you some new shoes, darling. Look.
Oh, no!
They're rather lovely. And we've only got one, because we can only afford one.
Whose shoe is that?
Oh, I couldn't possibly say.
You've persuaded some poor person to give up their shoe for a prop because I've decided to wear, and it's been a state secret, I'd say.
I wondered where they got to there,
year or so. I don't wear high heels. I've got trainers on because I'm more practical than anything else. So, whose shoe is this?
Well, I couldn't say, but look at your producer the next time you see her.
Okay, well, that was very generous of them. I've got my suspicions looking at that. The shoe, the size and the brand.
I know, very good. Top shop.
Here's a story, Emily, that I would have thought is a lot of common sense, and it's about terrorism. It's in the Express, and it's talking about special units for the worst terrorists, which I would have thought probably would have existed.
Well, this is the thing. I would have thought that this was already a policy. So they already exist, but essentially terrorists aren't sent to these units automatically after they're sentenced. And Dominic Raab is changing that. So dangerous terrorists go straight to these special units, these special wings, where they can't radicalise other inmates.
Well,
and these are called jihadi jails.
Well, you see, I'd be interested to see how those work, because one of the things we learned in Northern Ireland was by putting terrorists all in the same wing of the H blocks, as it was then, that they were able to run their operations and
that was even
radicalise.
worse.
Yeah, so I'm actually surprised that that sort of view is still in vogue.
Well, the problem is that you had jihadis, yes, radicalising people who knew nothing about their ideology.
Yeah.
So what do? You either separate... I guess I would prefer them to be in complete isolation from one another. I mean, if they're serious terrorists who have plotted to kill people.
Yeah.
But yes, this sounds like a no-brainer to me. But then you've made me think there.
Yeah, no, you're right.
There's
two sides to that argument there, but they can be concentrated with all their radicalism and spread it around, their fanaticism, or you mix them in with other prisoners where they have less effect. But they'll be contagious no matter where they are, won't they?
Yeah, because they offer, other inmates some kind of salvation or something to, look to.
So let us know your view on that. Special units for the worst terrorists.
Sounds good.
The most dangerous terrorists in Britain are to be sent straight to a special high-risk wing immediately after they are sentenced. Good idea, bad idea? gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews. Emily, thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you.
Christopher, thank you very much indeed.
I'll give you back your shoes later.
You'll be on the
I think I probably should
Kansas
just...
now, so you will.
Yes, I'm going to sort of discreetly show you the trainer if I can. There we go. That's
So
what it is.
Aren't they lovely?
So, yes, thank you, Biggins, for this potential replacement instead. What do we think?
What sort of colour would you call those?
Well...
Sick.
Sick. No. My other half very unkindly said they were like salmon colours, like I was running around with salmons on my feet.
No, salmon's a good description. I mean, the pink ball in snooker used to be called salmon. Salmon pink, and it is.
I like a salmon pink.
If anyone else has any ideas...
Smell a bit like salmon as well.
No, they do not. If anyone else has any sort of practical tips for how they get through the workday, then maybe let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk. And you know what? I'm not going to wear my high heels tomorrow. I'm going to wear my salmon-coloured trainers.
10 minutes to 9 is the time. Let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise.
MPs have been warning the greatest staffing crisis in the NHS's history is creating a serious risk to patient safety. The Health and Social Care Committee says research shows the health service is short of 12,000 doctors and 50,000 nurses and midwives.
More than 2 in 5 airport workers are considering leaving the industry, according to new research by job site CV Library. A survey of 1,700 workers found they wanted better pay and less stress, with 2 in 3 saying they haven't had a pay rise in the last 12 months.
A new study shows the number of restaurants closing down has increased sharply in the past year. His accountancy firm UHY Hacker says the total jumped from over 856 in 2021 to over 1,400 amid staff shortages and rising inflation.
And with the time at 10 minutes to 9, it's time for On Your Doorstep.
And we can check in this morning with David Donaldson, who's live for us this morning from Leith in Edinburgh ahead of the Fringe Festival. Very good morning to you, Davey.
Good morning, Rosie, and doesn't really get any better than this. Being in a pub before 9 o'clock in the morning, really, it's absolutely amazing. This is Chooster's Landing, which is a real go-to spot for people coming like to sit outside in the sun and have a beer. Obviously, we've heard from Murray at the Chop House earlier on. The tram works obviously not helping business greatly. They've also had the pandemic to come back from as well, which has been really, really difficult indeed. But certainly things are looking up. I'd like to say I'm joined by John Tyndall, owner of Chooster's Landing. John.
Morning.
Thanks for getting out of bed this early in the morning, but first of all, what's it been like? I mean, obviously you had the 2 hot days last week, that would have helped business.
Oh, we've had a phenomenal month. I mean, the whole of July's just been scorching, really. We haven't had any rain at all, so even if it's cloudy down in Leith here and the weather's okay, we're absolutely rammed, and it's been fabulous and people have been absolutely loving it.
It's really been difficult though as well, the recovery from the pandemic, and I know you've put a lot of money into the business following the pandemic.
Yeah, we had to change our whole business plan and operation. It just forced us maybe to come into the 21st century. We've invested a lot of money just making the place safer, bigger, making much more use of the outside space, and just generally investing in how the processes work and make it a lot more comfortable for customers.
Now, you've not really got too affected by the tram works, but obviously a lot of businesses in this area are. Has it had an impact in your business at all, or is it just the other businesses on the other side of the bridge that have suffered?
It's had a huge impact in the fact that if you're in the centre of town, it's a hell of a job to get down to Leith, because everywhere you go it's shut or there's roadworks. So yes, it does put people off coming down. They really have to make a special effort to come down here, because it's added about another 40 minutes to your journey.
Well, John, it wouldn't be right if I didn't have an attempt. It has been some time since I've poured a pint. I'm going to have a wee shot of this, because maybe the old magic's still there. We'll soon find out. Right, am I doing this right?
Give it a try. Smack it down.
Right down, there we go. Very early to be doing this, but this is not for me, you understand. Definitely not for me.
No, it's for me.
Oh.
Oh, well, 3 out of 10.
I've seen better ones, as to be said. I think I need some work there. Anyway, there we go. John Tyndall from Chooster's Landing, getting the business back on track down here in Leith.
Well, the secret is, Davey, is a 45-degree angle when you're pouring. That's what I used to think I was going to be, a barman. That's when
Really?
When I presented television news in Ulster Television in Belfast, I finished the news at 7 o'clock and was in the bar at 7:30. Yeah, that's what I used to do. But you hold it, where Dougie get that all that straight, which creates foam going up there and whatever, but it needs to be to the side, sort of 45.
Davey, has it settled a little bit? Can we have a look?
Has it settled? It has settled a bit.
That's
terrible. Disgrace. Absolute embarrassment.
It's still drinkable, John says. Still drinkable.
Good job, you're a good reporter. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So don't go anywhere, we'll take a break there. And then in about 15 minutes' time, we're going to be talking to the biographer Tom Bauer, who will take us inside the war between the Windsors, Harry and Meghan and all the rest of the royal family. And his book is called Revenge, after this.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and it's a cooler and fresher day than yesterday with some sunny spells and scattered showers. Let's take a look at the details. So a mixture of sunny spells, an area of cloud and a few light showers across southwest England at lunchtime. Feeling fresher than Sunday though, with a brisk northwesterly breeze. The odd shower for southeast England too, and it's still going to be quite warm, but temperatures will be down several degrees than what we saw yesterday, and it's going to feel less humid too. In Wales, there's a fair amount of cloud in the sky likely, but a few bright spells here and there. A scattering of light showers is also likely. Maybe one or two heavier showers across the Midlands. They'll be moving quite swiftly though with that brisk northwesterly breeze. It's going to feel fresher with temperatures around 19 Celsius. Yorkshire and northeast England are going to see increasing amounts of showers, some quite heavy by the middle of the day. The odd rumble of thunder can't be ruled out, especially further to the north. Some more general rain, again heavy, perhaps quite thundery at times, will be pushing south through southern Scotland this lunchtime. There will be some brighter skies though that should follow on from the north. For most of Northern Ireland, it's a much drier prospect this lunchtime compared to yesterday. Still a few showers to dodge, and it's feeling quite cool with temperatures of just 16 Celsius in Belfast. So the chance of further showers for many parts of the UK for the rest of the afternoon should become drier into the evening. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Tonight on GB News. At 6, it's Doobs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Truss and Sunak launch fresh attacks on each other ahead of a crucial leadership debate tonight.
Hello there, a very good morning to you. Good to have you on board. The time, just approaching 9 o'clock on this Monday, the 25th of July. You're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Rosie Wright.
Well, here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak will attempt to close the gap between himself and his rival Liz Truss as they both go head-to-head in a BBC debate tonight.
The two candidates clashed yesterday over defence and immigration, with both launching new hardline plans to protect UK borders.
The NHS is facing its worst ever staffing crisis, putting patient safety at risk. According to a new report, its recruiting issues and mass resignations have left a shortage of 12,000 doctors and more than 50,000 nurses and midwives.
And holidaymakers are being warned that long waits at Dover will continue throughout the summer due to surging demand and more border checks. It comes after a third day of serious disruption that left some families waiting up to 21 hours in traffic.
Can you imagine that? Loads of you getting in touch about travel disruption, particularly over the weekend. You can do the same. You can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or drop us a tweet too @gbnews.
So, just on various things we're saying here about the travel chaos, the French border officials should be sent to France where they belong. We should only have UK border patrol and immigration officials in the UK doing all the checks on people entering. Let people who want to go to France be held up in France, not Dover or Folkestone, etc., says Russell.
Well, yeah, some of the views have been, and David made this point earlier, I'm fairly sure, he says, the French are deliberately understaffing and going slow. Is this about the French punishing us for Brexit?
Brian says, I have lived in Greece for over 17 years, and trust me, says Brian, when I say that Europe and the rest of the world is laughing at the state of UK politics. Boris politics, he calls them. Brexit, immigration, it's farcical. You couldn't make this stuff up. I'm an Englishman, very proud to be part of the UK, but it is a joke on the world stage, he says. Right, and people do watch us from around the world because they can watch us online, and they can listen to us on the radio, and they can watch us on our very own YouTube channel, so I hope you're one of them. Top story today is that Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak will go head-to-head in a leadership debate. That's going to happen tonight as the Conservative leadership election turns increasingly bitter.
Now, yesterday, both of them clashed over immigration. They launched their plans to, they say, protect the UK's borders. Earlier on, we spoke to the Education Secretary, James Cleverley, who's supporting Liz Truss for leader.
Do you think it's right that we test the future Prime Minister of this country? Now, one of the reasons I'm supporting Liz is because I've seen how she's worked as Foreign Secretary. I've seen how she's conducted herself on the world stage. I've seen how she's taken long-standing, consistent positions on China, for example, on making the most of the fact we've left the European Union. But a lot of people won't have seen all that detail, so I think it's right that they see them both. And I think it's right that they're tested. They're tested on whether their ideas are deliverable and also whether those ideas are long-held ideas.
We also heard from Kevin Hollinrake. He's MP for Thirsk and Malton and a supporter of Rishi Sunak.
Rishi himself says, you know, he's the underdog in this race, but it's great to have the opportunity to set his stall out. And in my view, he's by far the best candidate to be our next Prime Minister. He's got the intellect, he's got all the features we need from somebody who can beat Labour in the next election, which is crucial, of course. he is a genuine, authentic Brexiteer. That's the most important thing right now. I think we need somebody who understands Brexit, who campaigned for Brexit, and somebody who can make the most of it. Because I think there's a world of opportunity out there, but we need somebody who can really deliver on that opportunity.
Now, as we've been telling you in our headlines, holidaymakers are being warned that long waits at Dover, they're going to continue throughout the summer because of surging demand and, of course, more border checks.
Now, yesterday saw a third day of serious travel disruption, absolutely appalling stuff that left some people waiting up to 21 hours in bumper-to-bumper traffic.
Well, earlier on the show, we spoke to the travel editor at The Independent, Simon Calder.
So things moving fairly smoothly this morning. Most of the backlog has been cleared. We're now onto the many, many hundreds of trucks that are on the A20 and the M20, which were part of the problem over the weekend because they all got stacked up on Friday. Now, what individual motorists have been doing once they got near either the Port of Dover or the Eurotunnel terminal at Folkestone was hit the back of the queue and think, well, I'm not staying here. They and their sat-navs rationally thought, OK, well, I'll go through this lovely leafy village. I'll find my way there. As soon as a significant number of people do that for a perfectly rational, individual reason, things snarl up and actually you get gridlock because Kent was never designed to be an EU external frontier in the same way that you have frontiers between the EU and Russia and Turkey. Nobody thought of it. And so, therefore, the road system simply cannot cope with a snarl up rather than this just continuous conveyor belt of cars, of trucks, of buses, of people going from Dover and Folkestone over to France. Things snarled up this weekend, and I'm afraid the traffic in those lovely leafy villages and towns also snarled up.
Now, your sat-nav wasn't really going to help you over the weekend. I think you might be able to solve some major arguments in cars over this week and families going on holidays. Waze or Google Maps?
Well, I took my bicycle. That was the only way I could see getting around the traffic. So, but very much ignore your sat nav. If you, and this is absolutely the line from Dover and from Folkestone, if you are diverted on a particular route to get to the port, to the terminal, stay on that diversion. Don't start freelancing because actually, when individuals do that, everything snarls up and you can just get a single roundabout, a critical traffic intersection, completely clogged. Nobody's going to get through.
What's it like this morning?
Things not too bad at all, fairly free-flowing. As always, if you can get there really early, then you're going to beat the traffic. I was up and about around Kent about 5 o'clock in the morning, and actually you could have driven to the terminal in Folkestone or to the Port of Dover. You then have a long wait, typically an hour or 2 hours to get through French passport control, but at least you'd be in the right realm. And basically, whatever time it says on your ticket, the ferry companies, Eurotunnel, are saying, just turn up, we'll get you on the first available service.
Well, if you are travelling today, you could do worse than attend the one-day festival on this Monday in memory of the TV presenter Caroline Flack.
It's called Flackstock, and it's going to have comedy, dance and musical acts to celebrate her life, but also to raise awareness for the mental health of all of us.
In studio to tell us all about this, Dean Piper. He's a celebrity publicist and was a friend of Caroline. How are you going to feel about today, Dean?
Do you know what? I think it's quite mixed emotions, isn't it? Because obviously after she died, we all we were in lockdown. We weren't able to go through it and, work it out in our heads. So the whole process has been really cathartic for everybody that's been working on it.
She liked a party.
She loved a festival.
Yeah.
That was where she came alive, from Glastonbury to V Festival to House Festival. If Caroline was there, then we knew we were going to have fun.
So what's the aim of what you're trying to do? It's not just a commemoration for...
No, not at all. I mean, we've actually got 4 charities. So we've got Mind, Samaritans, Choose Love and the Charlie Waller Trust. They're all going to get a lot of money from today. People like Natalie Pinkham have been working tirelessly behind the scenes with Caroline's mum, Christine, and her sister, Jodie. So we've all come together. There's a little committee that's like Dawn O'Porter, Keith Lemon, and Natalie herself. I mean, Natalie's like a force of nature. She's gone out there and got McDonald's sponsoring us. We've got free McDonald's for everyone. It's it's going to be a real collective moment, a bit like a Raw Variety of all of Caroline's friends on stage.
Amazing. I mean, part of it is about raising awareness, but surely for you as well, it must also be about engineering actual change in that industry, in a world that you're still very much part of.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's one good thing that could come from Caroline's passing, it's the fact that we've all had to have more of a thought about what we're doing online and what we're doing in real life and how kind we are and trolls. And it's been a conversation starter for where we are in celebrity, I think.
Could I ask you, I mean, that was your business, showbiz reporter.
Yeah.
It's not what you do now.
No.
Did you have a change of mind?
Yeah, I completely did. I mean, I think it was before Caroline passed especially, but, you know, social media it's pretty much Japanese knotweed, isn't it, as far as what it's done to the industry. The value of a celebrity interview has changed so vastly. There's not really a celebrity interview that really rocks our world these days. So it just wasn't as fun as what it was.
But it wasn't fun for someone like her, I'm sure, the way it looked into her private life and may or may not have contributed to pressures that were on her.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of this is about mental health and making people more aware of their own mental health. What do you hope is the message that will come out of all of this?
I mean, I really hope that people start looking at what social media and that whole movement does and how we've got to be careful with it. Because I think if you use it in the right way, sure, it's great, it's brilliant. You've got access to your fans and the people that are out there and your followers. But the reality is, it's a very tricky tightrope to walk. You know, we didn't have social media when I was a showbiz reporter running around the world and, you know, hanging out with people. And I'm really glad. And I think a lot of people are glad. You know, I've spoken to all sorts of people. Mel Steve, for example, she was like, thank God there wasn't social media when the Spice Girls came through.
Yeah.
So I really hope that it's...
But there were reality programmes, there's still reality programmes. The programme that Caroline was associated with, Love Island, is transmitting at the moment. What about the responsibilities of the broadcasters?
I think it's definitely changed what they are doing. I hope it has. I still think that there's a lot of work to do. I've spoken to Caroline's mum as we've been promoting this, and, you know, there is still a lot more that they could do to support those people that are taken from the girl next door to thrust into the spotlight.
What should they be doing? Because all those contestants, a lot of them, you know, they want to be influencers and they're courting attention on social media because they see Love Island not as an opportunity, let's be candid, to find a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever, but actually to engineer income for themselves to then represent a brand and sell swimwear on Instagram.
I think that there's a process that they need to do, and I know that, you know, before we were always talking about the media training that people get when they go on these sort of shows. But what I think they've really realised that they need to do is the aftercare. You know, it's not just like, right, the show finishes, you've got your boyfriend and you've got your 100 grand or whatever it is. It's then 6 months afterwards, you know, you've been plucked and put into this position and then you're trying to work out, what can I do?
You're not famous, you're really famous, and then you go down again.
Yeah.
You know, it's,
And the public have got access to you now because they can tweet you, they can send you an instant message like that.
Yeah, they can, and I think that that's something that, you know, the celebrities from yesteryear that I was always a part of, I think that's something that they struggle with, especially if they kind of, I don't know, lose their show or they don't have that spotlight doing the same thing.
Well, listen, I'm just sitting thinking here, I'm thinking, what am I doing today? And then I realise all the things that are in the way. But Flaxstock.
Yes.
It's a Monday, boring day of the week, isn't it? Really, and there you're on holiday. People can be on holiday.
We've got Natalie Imbruglia, Louise Redknapp, Tom Grennan, Ronan Keating, Ollie Murs, they're all appearing.
Great lineup.
And you can just turn up, buy a ticket.
So where do you buy your ticket? Can you buy one at the door?
You can buy it on the door.
And you get a McDonald's for free?
Yeah, you do. A plant-based McDonald's. You do.
Dean, good luck with it. And if you one way, just to finish, of reminding people about Caroline Flack or paying tribute to her or what she'd want to be remembered for or how we're going to remember her in the future, what would you say about her?
Be kind. It's really simple. You know, before you do that tweet or you dehumanise yourself on social media, just remember that we're all humans and no matter how thick your skin is,
Yeah.
it still gets through.
Yeah, it still gets through. Thank you very much indeed. Good words, Dean. Thank you very much indeed. Dean Piper there. Flackstock is happening today. The location is...
Englefield House.
Englefield House.
Near Reading.
Look it up, near Reading. And thank you very much indeed. If you're going, enjoy yourselves, have a good day, and remember Caroline, and remember to be kind.
Right now, 14 minutes past 9. After the break, the author Tom Bowers is going to tell us all about his book, Revenge, Meghan, Harry and the war between the Windsors. That's
Not
next.
sure there's anything much being kind in that, but I mean, it's going to be a good read after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio,
On digital, absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Right, a lot of royal stories now, and according to today's papers, Prince Harry has completed his long-awaited autobiography. The final manuscript is said to have been already signed off by lawyers. I wrote an autobiography once. It went from being that size to that after the lawyers looked at it, but anyway.
Oh, God. Oh, my goodness. Well, the one book everyone is talking about, well, it might have been the first version of your autobiography, Eamonn, is Tom Bowers. It's called Revenge, Meghan, Harry and the War Between the Windsors. We can speak to the man himself, the author, this morning. Good morning to you, Tom.
Good morning.
Tom, always great to talk to you. You're meticulous, you're forensic about your research. When you say it's a war between the Windsors, how toxic is this war? How bad is it?
Well, after the Oprah Winfrey interview, it clearly was very toxic. And I think that both sides would try to some extent lower the temperature. But the underlining anger between both sides can't be removed. And of course, the news today that Harry's memoir is going to be published in the near future will just alarm the royal family here in England about what he's actually going to say to earn his money.
They're perfect. We all have our little nuances and weaknesses and whatever. What sort of pairing was it when Harry got together with Meghan? Did they exacerbate each other's weaknesses or did they strengthen each other?
Well, I think they're both very needy people. But the point is, I think that Meghan was on a manhunt. She was looking for a husband and an English husband. And Harry was available. And she carefully researched all his strengths and, more importantly, his weaknesses. And when that moment came when she first met him, she could easily, because she's an extraordinarily good performer in those circumstances, she's an actress after all, she could reassure him that she was the one he was looking for. And he was desperately looking for somebody. He confessed he was a lonely man. He confessed he couldn't find anyone suitable. He'd gone through some very unhappy relationships. And Meghan fitted the bill. She provided everything he needed. She was good looking. She was good company. She could talk the way he wanted to talk about his subjects like Africa and things like that. And they both needed each other. And I think to that extent, for Harry, it was a wonderful gift, a match made in heaven, and also for Meghan, because that was the sort of person she was looking for, famous and rich.
Do they both still need each other to the same extent now?
Well, I think they do. I mean, I can't see, I know many people can't believe the relationship will continue, but I think Harry seems to be pretty happy in America. He likes paddling in the Pacific. He likes the sunshine. He likes being free from Kensington Palace and the control of Buckingham Palace. And I don't see how Meghan can, at the moment, do better, because she's still got her royal title. She's still got the label, which earns her money. So I think at the moment it's working out okay. I mean, the horror of the whole thing is that they capitalize and finance their well-being by trashing the royal family, which is the source of their status and income. But I think much depends now on what happens in Harry's memoir. What will he say to earn his money? That is the big question.
Next thing, we've just mentioned there, the autobiography seems to have been signed up. How explosive do you expect that to be? I mean, at the very least, it must create embarrassing situations whereby Harry and Meghan then can no longer mix with other members of the royal family because what may or may not be said.
Well, despite the awful things they said in the Oprah Winfrey interview, they still did mix with the royal family, both in St. Paul's, and they met the Queen and Prince Charles on their recent visit. So I don't think the horror of what they say seems to be a bar on them meeting the royal family, because the family on the whole doesn't want to create a bigger divide than there is at the moment. They prefer, obviously, to link up and end this feud. But I don't see how Harry can earn his living in this book, earn his advance, without saying even more damning things than he said already. And we've got to remind ourselves that both in his Apple TV series, the Oprah interview, and even in the NBC interview in the Invictus Games, he refused to say that he missed his father and brother. He pointedly attacked the royal family for not protecting the Queen. And now he's going to have to raise his game to make his book saleable. And that's what we'll wait to see, what he's going to say.
Talking about damning things, a lot of people waited to see what you were going to say, and some of it, you may look at it and you think it's harmless, you think if it's funny, you think they're just good stories and whatever. However, Meghan and Harry have an army of keyboard warriors who tend to support them. It takes them a week or so before they get up to date with what you say or I say or Rosie says or whatever it is. But sure as heck, they spring in to action. Do you think she's aware of the keyboard warriors who defend her and who are now attacking me as I speak, and you for writing that book?
Well, I don't do social media, so I don't have the pleasure of reading their vitriol. Of course she knows. I mean, Meghan is a person who controls the narrative. That has been part of the problem when she came to London to become part of the royal family. She couldn't understand why she wasn't more important and wasn't in control of everything. And that's why, of course, she has fractious relationships with so many people. So I'm convinced she has a very talented staff. They're hardworking. They know how important brand Markle is, and they will be keeping in touch with what's being said. They won't like everything that's being said, because however much people may attack me or my book, there are many people, I'm told, who love the book, and the sale of the book is now #1 bestseller. So that can't be of much pleasure to Meghan. So I think she is very much in control of what is being said, and she is utterly passionate about her image. I mean, that is everything that matters. She's a creature of Hollywood. She knows that celebrity images is what earns the money, and that's what she must protect.
What also earns the money is this sort of rancour. And, you know, you've talked about some of the family's desire for reconciliation. Do you not think that maybe the media, someone like yourself, are actually motivated for the sort of revenge part of this storyline to be the one that gains traction?
No, I don't think that's fair, frankly, because I wouldn't have written this book if she hadn't appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show. I thought that was just so disgraceful, what she said, what Harry said, and I'm a monarchist, and I just don't think she should have been allowed to say those things unchallenged by Oprah Winfrey. It was scandalous. So I embarked on this book to actually understand what sort of person actually launches that sort of unfair, untrue attack on the royal family. And that's very much my motive. I tried to find out the truth. And it was only by finding so many different aspects of her life which were not in the public domain that I could actually come to the conclusion that I did, and I'm told it's a good read. And not only is it a good read, it's an authoritative read. It tells the truth about Meghan. And that's very important. We know the background and the motivation of a woman who clearly married into the royal family because she loved Harry. Don't doubt that, but also because she liked the status. But in the end, very quickly, she discovered that she wasn't get the status of number one, which is what she wanted. There is only one number one in the royal family, and the rest of the family is there to support the Queen. And Meghan didn't understand why she wasn't in the spotlight, and very quickly decided she'd be better off in Hollywood.
Does she see herself akin to Harry's mother, Princess Diana, in any ways? Does she see parallels there? Does he see parallels there?
Well, I think that's what's one of the many interesting things in the book, that especially during the tour of Australia, but even before, when Harry first met Meghan, he was convinced she had the magic of Diana. He was convinced that his mother's mantle had fallen on Meghan and that she was being treated in the same way by the media, and later was being applauded in Australia by the crowds, which she certainly attracted, and it was a greatly successful tour, ostensibly on the outside, because she had the magic of Diana. But the trouble with Harry is that he was very young when his mother died, and he never really understood this very complicated, complex woman and her role in Britain, her role in the royal family, and why in the end she found herself in the south of France with Mohammed Fayed and then died in that awful accident. I mean, unlike William, he didn't go around talking to Diana's friends and family to understand the complexities of his mother. She wasn't just a simple saint. She was a wonderful woman, but she had also her faults and failures, and was very much responsible also at the end for putting herself in danger. So Harry, while on the one hand undoubtedly would like to see Meghan as Diana, and I'm sure Meghan wouldn't shy away from that role either, I think the comparison is pretty slim.
Tom, fascinating talking to you. His book is a #1 bestseller. It's called Revenge, Meghan and Harry and the War Between the Windsors. It is out now. Tom Boyer, always a pleasure to talk to you, and good luck with the book.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us this morning. We'll be back to do it all again tomorrow from 6.
Up next, it's Tom Harwood with The Briefing. You have yourselves a good day, whatever you're up to.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and it's a cooler and fresher day than yesterday with some sunny spells and scattered showers. Let's take a look at the details. So a mixture of sunny spells, an area of clouds and a few light showers across southwest England at lunchtime. Feeling fresher than Sunday though, with a brisk northwesterly breeze. The odd shower for southeast England too, and it's still going to be quite warm, but temperatures will be down several degrees than what we saw yesterday, and it's going to feel less humid too. In Wales, there's a fair amount of cloud in the sky likely, but a few bright spells here and there. A scattering of light showers is also likely. Maybe 1 or 2 heavier showers across the Midlands. They'll be moving quite swiftly though with that brisk northwesterly breeze.